Chapter 356. If Jill's matter was arranged by the peacemakers, what was their purpose? The peacemakers naturally supported the peaceful coexistence of Zhu Lu country and the 5 surrounding countries, as well as the Thunderfire dynasty. Since that was the case, why did they need to collect large amounts of fine iron? Fine iron was obviously used to make weapons, but if it wasn't for war, why would they need to make so many weapons? Zhu Lu country didn't have a lot of soldiers. If it wasn't for war, they would have enough weapons and armor. Only during war would a large amount of weapons and armor be destroyed and require a large amount of fine iron to support the rear. Therefore, the peacemakers didn't want Jill to collect fine iron for war, so they must have other purposes. Ling Shiqi's mind was full of thoughts. He quickly remembered that the mind-controlling voodoo that Li Xianyang used to control him was brought by Jill. The mind-controlling voodoo was extremely precious. Even the princes and ministers of Zhu Lu country might not be able to get their hands on it. Who could easily take out the mind-controlling voodoo? Naturally, it would be the Gu God sect that specialized in voodoo. The sect leader of the Gu God sect was also the state teacher of Zhu Lu country. He was one of the higher-ups of the peacemakers. I should have thought of it. Ling Shiqi also felt that he had overlooked something. When he knew that the sect leader of the Gu God sect was one of the higher-ups of the peacemakers, he should have guessed it. However, it wasn't too late now. Now that Ling Shiqi had learned the truth from Jill, it was time for him to carefully consider another matter. That is, Jill was caught smuggling fine iron in the West Desolate province, the Dark Thunder Guards came to investigate, and then the king's sudden death. Is there any connection between these matters? From the perspective of a conspiracy theory, could this series of events have been premeditated? To be honest, Jill's method of secretly collecting fine iron in the West Desolate province wasn't that brilliant. When Ling Shiqi took over the Dark Thunder Manor in Mist Chi City, he saw that the Du family was likely smuggling fine iron, but there was no conclusive evidence. This meant that the Dark Thunder Guards had been watching the Du family and Profound Yang sect for a long time. This was also the reason why the previous supervisor, Xiaoyu, died. Therefore, even if there was no Ling Shiqi might be able to unravel Jill's scheme in the future. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards were full of elites. As long as they found solid evidence and reported it to their superiors, destroying the Profound Yang sect would be a piece of cake. In other words, it was very likely that what Jill had done would still be discovered. After that, the Dark Thunder Guards would also come to the Zhu Road country to question him. The king would also die like this. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi felt a chill run down his spine. If what he speculated was true, then the person behind this was truly terrifying. If what he speculated was true, then there would definitely be major changes waiting for them in the future. It was actually very simple to prove that his guess was correct. Ling Shiqi continued to ask while Jill was still under the control of the illusion. Are you the only one who sneaked into the western wilderness to collect iron? No. Ling Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He already knew the answer. It seems that not only in the northern region of the western wilderness, but also in other regions, there were people similar to Jill doing the same thing. If they stayed in the western wilderness for a long time, sooner or later they would be exposed. This also meant that the Dark Thunder Guards would come to the Zhu Road country sooner or later. All of this was indeed the same as Ling Shiqi's guess. But then, his brows deeply furrowed. Since the peace faction spent so much effort to trick them into coming to the Zhu Road country, then the king's death was most likely related to the peace faction. Now what Ling Shiqi was most concerned about was, what was their purpose? He faintly felt that they had been deeply involved in a terrible whirlpool. Just as Ling Shiqi was thinking hard, there was suddenly a big commotion in the inn. His heart tightened and he hurriedly walked out of the woodshed. Jill's eyes rolled back and he fainted. Ling Shiqi quickly arrived at the courtyard of the post house. He saw several hundred Zhu Lu country's guards had already surrounded the place so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. More than 10 people were confronting each other in the courtyard, including Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song. As for the other side, it was Prince Gus and Prince Heli from the war faction. What surprised him the most was that Guan Feihong was standing right next to Prince Gus. At this moment, Guan Feihong was covered in injuries and his expression was somewhat stiff. More importantly, Ling Shiqi actually felt a familiar aura from Guan Feihong's body. Heart-controlling goo. Prince Heli and Prince Gus looked similar in appearance. It seemed like they were a pair of brothers. The difference was that Prince Heli was tall and big. Just by standing there, he looked like a ferocious beast. Prince Heli angrily shouted at Yu Ruifeng, "Yu Ruifeng! It really was your Thunderfire dynasty's people who killed the king. Now that the witness is here, let's see how you're going to quibble." When Yu Ruifeng saw Ling Shiqi coming over, he immediately transmitted his voice, "What's going on? How did your people fall into their hands and accuse us of assassinating the king?" When Ling Shiqi sensed the heart-controlling goo in Guan Feihong's body, he knew what was going on. However, he couldn't say it out loud and could only explain, "Sir, I don't know either. I sent Guan Feihong out to scout this morning, but he didn't return at night. I didn't expect him to be captured by Zhu Road country. But sir, you should be able to see that Guan Feihong's condition isn't right. Perhaps they used some method to control him." Yu Ruifeng nodded inwardly. Facing the two princes of Zhu Road country, he didn't lose out in terms of aura. He said, "Princes, I respect you as princes of your country, which is why I'm negotiating with you. What's laughable is that as princes, you can't even see that they're trying to drive a wedge between us. Truly disappointing." "What did you say?" Prince Heli's eyes widened in anger. At this moment, Prince Gus pulled him back and said calmly, "Sir Yu, we caught this person near the city gate tonight. He wanted to escape the city, but we interrogated him and he told us the truth about your assassination of the king. Sir Yu, you should give us a suitable answer, right? Otherwise, even if you're from the Thunderfire dynasty, we'll still take revenge for His Majesty with our lives." At the end, Prince Gus's tone was filled with bloodthirst. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but feel anxious. He had guessed the truth, but there were too many people here and he couldn't tell Yu Ruifeng. Moreover, even if he said it, Zhu Road country's people might not believe him. On the contrary, they might even use Guan Feihong as one of his people to refute him. Ling Shiqi narrowed his eyes and forced himself to calm down to find a solution. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He found a breakthrough. Chapter 357. The breakthrough that Ling Shiqi thought of was to help Guan Feihong get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. However, it was not easy to get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. After all, he did not have 9 leaves powerful soul power that could directly devour the mind-controlling voodoo's soul. So he thought of an old method. Using illusions to get rid of illusions. Ling Shiqi had also studied and refined mind-controlling voodoo before. He knew that mind-controlling voodoo was actually constantly releasing illusions to control people's minds. So Ling Shiqi thought of the method that he used in the Phantom Realm to make Guan Feihong fall into the illusion again. It might help him temporarily get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. The reason why it was temporary was because the mind-controlling voodoo was constantly releasing illusions, and Ling Shiqi could not do it. However, it was enough as long as he could get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo in a short period of time. Yu Ruifeng was still arguing with the two princes, but they did not seem to have any intention of fighting. Ling Shiqi also guessed that they would not fight because once they did, there would be no room for retreat. Ling Shiqi hid behind people and secretly forced out a few drops of essence blood to form the ghost blood tattoo on his forehead. At the same time, a majestic mental power surged out. Guan Feihong was also in the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. If Ling Shiqi wanted to make him fall into the illusion instantly, he would have to use all his strength. Ling Shiqi did not hide his actions and was quickly discovered by the people of Zhu Lugua. Especially since the two princes were also in the unity of heaven and man realm, they noticed Ling Shiqi's mental power. Prince Heli immediately shouted, "Where did this junior come from? Do you want to fight?" Yu Ruifeng was also a little surprised by this, but he thought that Ling Shiqi must have his reasons for doing this. Moreover, no matter what, he had to protect Ling Shiqi. He moved his feet and vaguely protected Ling Shiqi behind him. Before Guan Feihong could say anything, he saw Ling Shiqi's eyes shoot out colorful lights. Then, Guan Feihong's face became a little distorted. His expression was sometimes painful, sometimes sluggish, and sometimes very shrewd. Guan Feihong opened his mouth and said intermittently, "My heart is controlled." As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Yu Ruifeng made a prompt decision and shouted, "Princes, what is the meaning of this? You actually secretly control the Dark Thunder Guards to point us? Do you think the Dark Thunder dynasty is easy to bully?" Prince Gus and Prince Holy's expressions froze. Things had gone beyond their expectations. "Ha!" Leng Shiqi suddenly roared. He had already unleashed his mental energy to the maximum, and the invisible mental energy around him even stirred up gusts of wind. This scene shocked many people. Even a Spirit Aperture Realm spirit caster might not have this level of spirit pulse. Under Leng Shiqi's full power illusion, Guan Feihong's eyes finally regained some clarity. He also knew that he didn't have much time, so he quickly said, "It's the Gu God Sect's leader, Sang Hetong. He used Gu worms to control me and deliberately let me be captured by the Imperial Guards so that the princes would attack the Dark Thunder Guards." After saying this, Guan Feihong's eyes lost their light again. Leng Shiqi panted and stopped the illusion. Just letting Guan Feihong regain his consciousness for 2 breaths was already his limit. At this point, the truth had already surfaced. Even if the people of Zhulu didn't cultivate Gu, they had seen it before. At this moment, they could see that Guan Feihong was hit by some powerful Gu. In other words, they were all played. The 2 princes' faces were uglier than the other. Prince Gus took the lead and said, "Lord Yu, so it was all a misunderstanding. You and I were both tricked. Lord Yu, please don't blame us." Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed and he said with a mocking tone, "Even if someone was secretly manipulating you, you're both honorable princes. You're really capable to be fooled by such a small trick." Prince Heli's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. At this moment, he was a bit glad that he didn't act too impulsively. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. He walked in front of Yu Ruifeng with a twisted face. The Dark Thunder Guards thought he was going to attack, but he lowered his head and said, "Yu Ruifeng, I, Healy, did not consider this matter thoroughly and almost caused a disaster. I, Healy, apologize to you." At the end of his speech, he even cupped his hands towards Yu Ruifeng in the Thunderblaze dynasty's etiquette. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi felt that Prince Heli was a straightforward man who could let go of things easily. Forget it. Yu Ruifeng could only give up. Even a prince bowed his head to him. What else did he want? Yu Ruifeng lowered his voice and said, "However, since someone dared to scheme against the princes and the Dark Thunder Guards, I won't take this lying down." What did the 2 princes think? Yu Ruifeng was also very depressed. In the morning, they had discussed that they would wait for the peacemakers to come to their door. However, they didn't expect that it would be the 2 princes from the war faction who came to their door to denounce them. This had already disrupted their plans twice in a row. Just as he didn't know what to do, Leng Shiqi broke the deadlock. Now that the clouds had cleared, Yu Ruifeng's heart gave birth to other thoughts. Prince Gus and Prince Heli both understood the meaning behind his words. He wanted them to join hands to deal with the peacemakers. Prince Gus's eyes flashed. If they could get the support of Yu Ruifeng and the Dark Thunder Guards, they would have a great chance of winning. However, this wasn't a brilliant plan. The more brilliant plan was to use the controlled Guan Feihong as a spy to make the peacemakers think that the Dark Thunder Guards and the war faction had completely fallen out. In this way, the peacemakers would take the initiative to contact the Dark Thunder Guards. When the time comes, the Dark Thunder Guards would be a bomb buried beside the peacemakers. Prince Gus immediately said, "Lord Yu is right. Prince Heli and I hate being schemed against the most. As for the person behind this, we brothers will definitely show them who's behind this. However, it would be best if we could get Lord Yu's help." Yu Ruifeng glanced at the guards around him and then looked at Guan Feihong. He didn't say anything. Prince Gus smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lord Yu. The people we brought tonight are all our trusted subordinates. They won't leak anything out." Yu Ruifeng nodded first, but in the next moment, he threw a punch at Prince Gus. Prince Gus's eyes flickered with uncertainty as he also threw a punch at him. Although the two fists did not explode with any powerful spiritual energy or spiritual light, when the two collided, a terrifying wave of spiritual energy suddenly blasted out, shaking everyone around and forcing them to retreat again and again. Leng Shiqi quickly retreated. He knew that the show had begun. Chapter 358. Boom! A loud explosion resounded in the sky above the inn, and all the tiles in the inn's courtyard were sent flying. Fortunately, the surrounding people were all spirit cultivator, and no one was injured, but they couldn't help but be flustered. Yu Ruifeng and Prince Gus, these two spirit cultivators at unity of heaven and man realm, fought. Even if they didn't use any spirit techniques or full strength, it was still shocking enough. Prince Gus roared with a red face, "What a good Dark Thunder Guard, what a good Yu Ruifeng, the witnesses are here, and you still refuse to admit it." Yu Ruifeng also roared, "What a joke, the king of a small country is nothing, even if he was tied up in front of me, I would be too lazy to kill him. Impudent. You dare to insult the late king in front of me." Prince Heli jumped out and started to add on to his act. Yu Ruifeng coldly shouted, I'm standing right here, let's see who dares to make a move. If we die here, your Zhu Lu country will be erased from the falling star continent." You. The two princes glared at each other, but they didn't make a move. The two sides argued for a while, then Prince Gus said, "Guards, from today onwards, surround the inn. Without special orders, no one is allowed to enter or leave." Prince Heli fiercely said, "Just wait until we find conclusive evidence. Even if we kill you on the spot, the Thunder Flame dynasty won't have anything to say." Yu Ruifeng's face was gloomy, and he spat out two words. "I won't see you off." Immediately, the two princes brought a portion of the guards and Guan Feihong out of the inn. Leng Shiqi watched from the side as they tried their best to perform. He estimated that by tomorrow morning, the news of the Dark Thunder Guard's inspector and Prince Gus's fight would spread through the streets. And with the inn surrounded by the guards, everyone would know that the two princes had completely fallen out with the Dark Thunder Guard. At this time, Yu Ruifeng gave a look to Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song, then turned and walked into the room. Leng Shiqi understood and followed. Yu Ruifeng closed the door and said to Leng Shiqi, "You did very well." Yuan Song also said with great admiration, "I didn't expect Supervisor Lu's observation to be so meticulous, to be able to see that Guan Feihong was being controlled. You were even able to break that strange technique. Truly admirable." Leng Shiqi said modestly, "Sirs, you flatter me. I only saw the clues because I know Guan Feihong very well." But Yu Ruifeng said, "You have indeed made a great contribution in this matter. I will remember this in my heart. If you hadn't temporarily dispelled that technique today, I'm afraid we really might have died here." At this point, Yu Ruifeng's face darkened. The sect leader of the Gu God sect is really something. Then Leng Shiqi told him about his interrogation of Jill and his suspicions. When Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song heard this, their faces sank. At this point, they all understood that the peace faction was secretly manipulating everything behind the scenes. Yu Ruifeng's eyes suddenly revealed a shocking cold light. He was able to sit in the position of the Western Wilderness County's inspector because of his shrewdness and skill. Moreover, his style of doing things had always been radical. This time, the peace faction had secretly schemed against him from the beginning to the end, so he naturally had to retaliate. As for the mission, as long as he could make Zhu Lugua obediently not cause trouble, the mission would be considered completed. Yu Ruifeng said in a low voice, "We are now standing with the war faction, but I believe that the peace faction will definitely come to me in 2 days. At that time, I will also agree to help them. Then, we will continue to sow discord between the two sides in secret and slowly weaken their strength. When the time is right, we will choose one side to take the throne." Leng Shiqi nodded secretly. Yu Ruifeng's thoughts were similar to his. He was treating himself as a double agent and was planning to trap both sides. The more the war faction and the peace faction fought, the weaker Zhu Lugua would become, which was naturally beneficial to the Thunderflame dynasty. However, Ling Shiqi felt that what they lacked the most now was information. It had only been a day and a night since they came to Zhulugua, but so many unexpected and dangerous things had happened. Moreover, they were all very passive. That was because their information was simply too limited. Even now, they hadn't even entered the palace gates, so they still didn't know how the king died. The Dark Thunder Guards that were sent out to collect information also had very little information. Therefore, after chatting with Yu Ruifeng for a while, Ling Shiqi decided to go out and investigate himself. Taking advantage of the night, he easily left the post house that was surrounded by the Imperial Guards using the Hand of Earth. Then, he quickly went around the entire Monarch City. His purpose was to light up the entire Monarch City system map. At the same time, he also used the supercilious eyes to look for traces of Mo Huisho. When he finished opening the system map, it was already the middle of the night, and he had already locked onto Mo Huisho's position. After Mo Huisho failed to interrogate Jill, she went to a slum in the north of the city. Zhulugua had never been rich. Even in Monarch City, there were slums. Ling Shiqi remembered that when he first found Mo Huisho by chance, she was in the palace, which meant that her status was not low. But now, she actually went to the slums. There must be some unspeakable secrets there. Ling Shiqi quietly approached the slums and immediately found Mo Huisho's spiritual aura. However, beside her, there was an aura that was slightly stronger than hers. It should also be a spirit aperture realm cultivator, but his realm was slightly higher than Mo Huisho's. Ling Shiqi knew that experts in the spirit astral realm could sense all kinds of auras around them, but spirit aperture realm experts couldn't. Therefore, he directly sank into the ground and quietly approached Mo Huisho's position. When he got closer, he heard Mo Huisho's voice. This time, she was using her original voice. Jill refused to let go. Now, Prince Gus and Prince Heli have already found the Dark Thunder Guards. Especially since Prince Heli has a fiery temper, I'm afraid things will get out of hand. Another person said, that's not necessarily true. Prince Heli looks careless on the surface, but he's actually very meticulous. Even so, it's completely impossible for the pro-war faction to win over the Dark Thunder Guard support. This strong force will benefit the pro-peace faction. That's not necessarily true. As long as the princess consort goes to meet Yu Ruifeng before the state elder and state preceptor, she might be able to win over the Dark Thunder Guards. Let mother personally go? That's impossible. Mo Huisho's voice suddenly became cold. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi suddenly felt an explosion of information. Mo Huisho was actually the king and princess consort's daughter? In other words, Mo Huisho was actually the princess of Zhulugua. Chapter 359. Ling Shiqi was even more puzzled. Since Mo Huisho was the princess of Zhulu country, why would she run to the West Desolate province? She even came up with the name of the great thief Mo Huisho. But Ling Shiqi wasn't very clear about the members of the royal family of Zhulu country. He only knew that the king indeed had a daughter, but he didn't know what her name was. Ling Shiqi suppressed the curiosity in his heart and continued to listen. Your Highness, what time is it now? Are you still bothered about your identity and face? Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but no matter which faction ascends the throne, you and Princess Consort will definitely not have a good ending. Now the only way out and support is the Dark Thunder Guards. Mo Huisho was silent for a while before she spoke. But this time, her voice sounded a little sorrowful. How could I not know what you said? But Imperial Mother and I are weak. We don't have military power nor the support of the ministers in the court. How can we fight with the two factions? The Dark Thunder Guards will definitely not choose us. Furthermore, the Dark Thunder Guards are already suspected of assassinating Imperial Father. They can't even protect themselves, so what ability do they have to help us? Your Highness, don't belittle yourself. At least some of the clan relatives will support you. In addition, Your Highness, don't underestimate the Dark Thunder Guards. Those people will definitely not sit still and wait for death. At this time, they will definitely be eager to take the initiative. As long as Princess Consort can help them out of their current predicament, it will be equivalent to sending charcoal in snowy weather. It will be easy to rope them in. Furthermore, Your Highness often goes to the West Desolate Province. You should know what the Dark Thunder Guards are best at. Mo Huaishou muttered, Dark Thunder Guards are best at investigation. That's right. The death of His Majesty has always been a mystery. Many people in the court think that they must first investigate the cause of death of the king and find the murderer who murdered the king. So the two princes of the pro-war faction were so anxious to start a conflict with the Dark Thunder Guards. If Princess Consort can invite the Dark Thunder Guards to help us investigate the king's death and find the murderer, not only can it help them clear their grievances, it can also help us win over many people's support. But the Dark Thunder Guards themselves are suspected of murdering Imperial Father. The two factions will never agree to let them investigate the cause of Imperial Father's death. Don't worry, Your Highness. As long as Her Highness is willing to step in, I will have a way. Sigh, alright, that's all we can do now. I'll have to trouble you then, senior brother. Your Highness is too polite. It is my honor to be of service to Your Highness. After that, the two left the slums separately. Leng Shiqi thought for a while. Judging from the conversation between the two, it seemed that the Princess Consort's faction was preparing to intervene in the fight for the throne, and they were also planning to rope in the Dark Thunder Guards. This was also reasonable. Actually, the Princess Consort's bloodline was not without hope. From the point of view of Yu Ruifeng and the Dark Thunder Guards, they didn't want the pro-war faction to take over, nor did they want the pro-peace faction to take over. After all, it could be said that the peacemakers had been plotting against the Dark Thunder Guards from the beginning to the end. Therefore, the Princess Consort's bloodline was the most suitable. However, Leng Shiqi was very interested in Mo Huaishou and the identity of this senior brother that she mentioned. He practiced the Thousand Goose spirit-devouring skill. When he came to Zhu Lu country, he knew that this skill was a forbidden skill of the Gu God sect, and only the core disciples of the Gu God sect were qualified to practice it. Therefore, Mo Huaishou must be a member of the Gu God sect, and so should that senior brother. But this was interesting. Logically speaking, Mo Huaishou should belong to the pro-peace faction, but now she wanted to take over the throne by herself. Not only that, what made Leng Shiqi more curious was why Mo Huaishou, as the princess of Zhu Lu country, would join the Gu God sect. There might be many unknown secrets hidden in it. Although he had obtained some useful information from this trip, it also raised more questions. Leng Shiqi shook his head. He didn't want to delve into the inside story of the royal family of Zhu Lu country. The most important thing now was to inquire more information, so that he could have some initiative. Next, he wandered in the mansions of various ministers in Yunwu City. He kept a respectful distance from all the masters of Gang's spirit realm in the mansion. In this way, he didn't return to his room until dawn. This night, he didn't gain much, but it wasn't little either. At least he had learned the cause of the king's death. The king's death was really strange. Although his health was not good, especially recently, it was getting worse and worse. But under the treatment of many imperial doctors, he could have held on for another 2 or 3 years. But just last night, he suddenly died. Last night, the king was still reading the memorials as usual. Suddenly, he fell on the table weakly and died. After examination, there was no wound on the king's body, and there was no sign of poisoning in his body. He died so strangely. Now, people of the two factions were trying hard to find the cause of the king's death and catch the king's assassin. Whoever could solve this problem would have a great advantage in fighting for the throne. But at present, the only suspect was the Dark Thunder Guard. Because there was a witness in the Dark Thunder Guard, Guan Feihong. Thinking of Guan Feihong, Leng Shiqi couldn't help touching his chin. Guan Feihong could be said to be a knife of the pro-peace faction. But after Leng Shiqi saw through the mind-controlling insect, he became a knife of the pro-war faction and the Dark Thunder Guard. Guan Feihong was now a spy on 3 sides. But Leng Shiqi was more concerned about why he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect. According to Prince Heli, Guan Feihong was arrested near the city gate. Leng Shiqi remembered that he didn't find Guan Feihong even when he rolled his eyes, which meant that Guan Feihong probably left Yunwu City. And he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect, so it was very likely that he went to the Gu God sect. The Gu God sect was located on the Gu God Peak dozens of miles away from Yunwu City. Before, Leng Shiqi had always suspected that Guan Feihong seemed to have something to do with the Gu God sect. Now it seemed that it was true. He probably wanted to go to the Gu God sect to inquire about information, but he was discovered. He was also recognized as a Dark Thunder Guard, so he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect to point out the Dark Thunder Guard. It seems that I still have to find a chance to bring Guan Feihong back. Leng Shiqi murmured. Guan Feihong must still have secrets that ordinary people didn't know, but he was now imprisoned in the prince's mansion. There were not only spirit cultivators in the gang spirit realm, but also masters of the oneness of heaven and men realm. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to sneak in there, so this matter had to be considered in the long run. Just as he was thinking about how to contact Guan Feihong, Yu Ruifeng asked someone to summon him. As soon as he saw Yu Ruifeng, he said something surprising. Last night, the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hetong, came to see me. Chapter 360. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He wasn't surprised that the Gu God sect's hierarch could easily get past the Imperial Guards outside. It was because this was nothing to an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm. He was surprised that the Gu God sect's leader came so quickly. Leng Shiqi was still thinking that now that the show had just begun, the pro-war faction had already shown up, and the princess's faction was ready to make a move. It was time for the pro-peace faction to appear. But last night, one of the leaders of the pro-peace faction, the Gu God sect's leader, Sang Hetong, had already come to find Yu Ruifeng. Yu Ruifeng set up an isolation restriction and said to Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song, Sang Hetong really came to find us to cooperate, and can temporarily remove our suspicion. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows when he heard this. The pro-peace faction and the princess's faction wanted to help them clear their suspicion. It seemed that there would be a good show to watch. Now, we have a foot in both boats, and what we need to do is sink both boats. Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed fiercely. But Leng Shiqi thought to himself, I'm afraid we're not in 2 boats, but 3. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. My lord, Princess Bess had a conflict with the Imperial Guards outside the post house. Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song were both surprised. Why did the princess come to find them? She even had a conflict with the Imperial Guards. Didn't this offend the 2 princes? Zhu Lu country wasn't a hereditary system, and if one of the 2 princes ascended the throne in the future, this princess would suffer. But since she was already here, there was no reason to not see her. Yu Ruifeng immediately rushed to the gate of the post house with Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song. Princess Bess looked to be in her 30s. She wasn't extremely beautiful, but she was full of luxurious and graceful temperament. At this moment, she angrily stared at the Imperial Guard who stopped her. I'll say it again, get out of the way. Please forgive me, Princess. The 2 princes personally ordered that unless there is a special order, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Please don't make things difficult for me. The Imperial Guard half knelt in front of Princess Bess, but he didn't move half a step. Special order? I wonder if this token in my hand can be used. Bess took out a token that looked like it was made of jade, but wasn't made of jade, and seemed to be made of gold, but wasn't made of gold. All the Imperial Guards knelt down when they saw this item. Bess Wangfei directly stepped over the person who was blocking her. The guard didn't stop her anymore because what Bess Wangfei took out was the royal token of Zhu Lu. It symbolized the highest authority in Zhu Lu country. At this time, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed with surprise. He went forward and cupped his hands. Greetings, Your Highness. Wang Fei first smiled gently at Yu Ruifeng, but she did not speak to Yu Ruifeng. Instead, she turned and spoke to the Imperial Guards kneeling on the ground. I can prove that His Majesty's death has nothing to do with the Dark Thunder Guards. You can go back now. The Imperial Guards hesitated. They didn't dare to disobey the prince's orders, but they didn't dare to disobey the king's orders either. In the end, they could only say in unison, "Yes, Your Majesty." Then, the imperial guards left in a neat formation like the tide. Ling Shiqi and the others saw all of this. He knew that Wang Fei must have asked the Dark Thunder Guards for help. Best Wang Fei then smiled at Yu Ruifeng and said, "I've wronged Lord Yu and the Dark Thunder Guards, please don't blame me." Yu Ruifeng also revealed a smile. "It's an honor for Wang Fei to come here." "Wang Fei, please come in." "Wait." A rough voice suddenly came. Ling Shiqi looked over and saw the tall Prince Heli arrive in front of the guest house like a meteor. Wang Fei's eyes flickered and there was an undetectable trace of panic in them. Prince Heli walked over with large strides. His eyes were wide open and filled with anger. It looked a bit scary from afar. "Bess, was it you who withdrew the Imperial Guards?" He actually called Wang Fei by her name, and there wasn't the slightest bit of respect in his tone, it was even questioning. Wang Fei's expression darkened. She hadn't expected Prince Heli to come so quickly, she had only said a few words. Furthermore, Prince Heli's attitude toward her made her even angrier, but she didn't dare flare up. She continued to smile and said, "Prince Heli, you really came quickly. Answer my question." Prince Heli didn't want to waste words with her, and his attitude was very unyielding. Wang Fei's smile faded. She took out the king's order and pointed at Prince Heli. "What, does Prince Heli want to defy the king's order? Or are you already looking down on Wang Ling?" Prince Heli's face twitched a few times, and he shouted in a low voice, "Humph, even if you have the king's order, you can't get close to the Dark Thunder Guards at will. They're a major suspect in the assassination of His Majesty the King." "Nonsense. His Majesty the King's death has nothing to do with the Dark Thunder Guards. I can testify to that. Do you know that you almost made a big mistake and almost pushed our Zhu Road country into the abyss?" Wang Fei's tone also became unyielding. "The princess is right." At that moment, an old man with white hair and a white beard walked in with a walking stick, accompanied by a group of people. He was Zhu Road country's elder, Chu Li. Ling Shiqi's eyes narrowed. The three forces vying for the throne of Zhu Road were now gathered, but the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hetong, and Prince Gus weren't here. Chu Li's appearance here was completely out of Wang Fei's and Prince Heli's expectations, but within Yu Ruifeng and Ling Shiqi's expectations. Chu Li's words shocked Wang Fei and Prince Heli at the same time. Judging from Chu Li's words, he seemed to be supporting Wang Fei. Chu Li ignored their astonishment. He looked straight at Yu Ruifeng and said, "Lord Yu and the Dark Thunder Guards never left the post house on the night of His Majesty's death, so how could they assassinate His Majesty? As for the witness, I think it was tampered with by someone, so it can't be taken seriously." Wang Fei's mood was very complicated. Chu Li's sudden appearance could suppress Prince Heli. But this way, the Dark Thunder Guards wouldn't only remember her benefits. She gritted her teeth and said, "That's right. I heard that the Dark Thunder Guards are best at investigating and solving cases. Why don't we trouble them to investigate the cause of His Majesty's death?" Prince Heli immediately shouted, "Impossible. I'm not asking for your opinion. Does Lord Yu think this is feasible?" Wang Fei directly asked Yu Ruifeng for his opinion. Yu Ruifeng's eyes swept over the three people present, then he looked at Yuan Song and Ling Shiqi. He nodded. "Since the princess has spoken, it would be unsatisfactory if we refuse. But I don't know if the elder and Prince Heli will agree." Yu Ruifeng's words caused the three parties to have their own thoughts. Chapter 361. Best Wang Fei had the Dark Thunder Guards investigate the king's death, which surprised Prince Heli and Elder Chu Li. But they quickly realized that Best Wang Fei wanted to use this opportunity to win over the Dark Thunder Guards. All three sides wanted the Dark Thunder Guards' help, but it was clear that the Dark Thunder Guards could only choose one side. Now, the peacemakers thought the Dark Thunder Guards were on their side. The warmongers thought the Dark Thunder Guards were spies they had planted in the peacemakers. Only Bess Wangfei hadn't clearly won over the Dark Thunder Guards, so she was the most anxious. But fortunately, Yu Ruifeng had given her a clear answer. What she needed to do next was to ensure that the Dark Thunder Guards could investigate the king's death. Then she would have many opportunities to contact the Dark Thunder Guards. Elder Chu Li was in a bit of a dilemma. His trip today was to lift the Dark Thunder Guards' house arrest and give them face. This point happened to coincide with Bess Wangfei, so he supported her from the beginning. But he didn't want to let the Dark Thunder Guards investigate the king's death. He had some understanding of the Dark Thunder Guards' abilities. If the Dark Thunder Guards really did intervene, they might be able to find the truth. But he had just stood on the Dark Thunder Guards' side, so he had no choice but to agree now. So he could only say, this old man agrees with the Wangfei's proposal. Prince Heli was inferior, so he could only hold his face and silently nod. Bess Wangfei chuckled, that is good. This matter should not be delayed. Please enter the palace as soon as possible, Lord Yu. Don't worry, Wangfei. After we arrange things, we will enter the palace to investigate the truth of the king's death. When Yu Ruifeng said this, he noticed Ling Shiqi give him a look. Yu Ruifeng immediately looked at Prince Heli. Prince Heli, since the Wangfei and Elder Chu Li can prove that the Dark Thunder Guards are not suspected of killing the king, then can my subordinate Guan Feihong be released? Prince Heli snorted, yes. Everyone saw that the matter was settled, so there was no need to stay. Before Chu Li and Prince Heli left, they both looked at Princess Bess. Although they didn't reveal anything in their eyes, the threat in their eyes was obvious. Since the princess consort dared to interfere in the fight for the throne, then don't blame them for being merciless. However, Bess had no other choice. She knew that she couldn't hide the fact that she was here, but she had to do it. In this way, she had indeed offended both the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction. Perhaps she would be eliminated one day. However, if she didn't do anything, then no matter who ascended the throne, she would still be unable to escape death. Rather than waiting for death, why not take a gamble? After sending everyone away, Yu Ruifeng called Yuan Song and Ling Shiqi to discuss how to investigate the king's death and how to deal with the three parties to achieve their goals. However, Ling Shiqi said, Darren, I will not follow you into the palace. Yu Ruifeng looked at him in confusion, but he didn't ask because he knew that Ling Shiqi would explain it to him. I'm ashamed to say that I've only joined the Dark Thunder Guards for a short period of time. I really don't have much experience in investigating cases. I believe that with you Darren and Yuan Darren, we will be able to solve this case quickly. Your humble servant would like to start from Guan Feihong's clues and see what he encountered and discovered. If I'm not wrong, the person who planted the mind-controlling voodoo in him must be someone from the Gu God sect. This means that he has been in contact with the Gu God sect. We can inquire about the internal information of the Gu God sect through him. All right. Yu Ruifeng immediately agreed. He had a grudge against the Gu God sect. Moreover, Ling Shiqi was right. The Dark Thunder Guards would enter the palace to investigate, so it didn't matter if he joined them. It was better to let Ling Shiqi out and start with Guan Feihong. Maybe they could find another clue. At noon, Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song took a few Dark Thunder Guards into the palace. Ling Shiqi waited for Guan Feihong in the post house for a while. Ling Shiqi pulled him into the room and began to carefully observe Guan Feihong. Although Ling Shiqi himself was also affected by the mind-controlling voodoo, it was removed by Jiu Li after that. Therefore, he wasn't very clear about the specific state of the affected person. At this moment, Guan Feihong was a little depressed, but there was nothing unusual. Ling Shiqi asked, Old Guan, how do you feel? Guan Feihong saw that Ling Shiqi even called him Old Guan. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but this made him feel a little familiar. He replied, Darren, this feeling is very strange. Last time you temporarily removed the mind-controlling voodoo. Now I know that I've been poisoned. I also have my own consciousness. However, once the person who cast the spell orders me, I can't control myself and regard the order as an oracle. No matter what, I have to complete it. I see. Ling Shiqi understood, Then can you tell me now what is your relationship with the Gu God sect? Guan Feihong smiled bitterly. He stopped himself from speaking. Actually, this subordinate is originally from Zhu Lu country. My father is from the Western Wilderness Prefecture and my mother is from the Zhu Lu country. I inherited my father's appearance. When I was young, I was also a disciple of the Gu God sect. However, the Gu God sect was full of danger. The reason why my master accepted me was that he wanted to use me to refine voodoo. Later, I plotted to kill my master, but the matter was exposed. Therefore, I had to escape to the Western Wilderness Prefecture and by chance, joined the Blood Cloak Pavilion. It turned out that Guan Feihong was an abandoned disciple of the Gu God sect. Ling Shiqi asked again, then how did you get affected by the mind-controlling voodoo? Alas. Guan Feihong sighed slightly, this is my bad luck. Originally, I planned to go to the Gu God sect to inquire about the news. Who knew that I would run into the Gu God sect's leader, Sang Hetong? He didn't recognize my true identity, but he recognized my identity as a Dark Thunder Guard. Therefore, he thought of using me to provoke the Dark Thunder Guard and the Jingoist sect. Unexpectedly, he ran into Sang Hetong when he went out. Ling Shiqi had to admit that Guan Feihong's luck was really bad. Ling Shiqi tapped the table with his finger and thought quickly. Guan Feihong's mind-controlling voodoo was personally planted by Sang Hetong. Therefore, it would definitely not be used to provoke the Dark Thunder Guard and the Jingoist sect. Moreover, the Jingoist sect, led by Elder Chu Li and Sang Hetong, tried their best to lead the Dark Thunder Guard to Zhu Lu country. He was afraid that it was not as simple as a conflict with the Jingoist sect. While he was thinking, Guan Feihong's body suddenly stiffened and his eyes became hollow. Although he recovered in less than a breath's time, Ling Shiqi still noticed it. Chapter 362. Ling Shiqi saw Guan Feihong's strange behavior and knew that Sang Hetong must have given Guan Feihong some orders. He hurriedly asked, Old Guan, what did Sang Hetong ask you to do? Guan Feihong's eyes were filled with confusion. Sang Hetong? He's not here. Why would he ask me to do something? Ling Shiqi frowned. He thought to himself, what a powerful mind-controlling voodoo. Fortunately, I had 9 leave by my side. Otherwise, I might not have been able to resist the control of the mind-controlling voodoo even if I had the mind illusion world. Then, he said to Guan Hongfei, empty your mind and don't resist my mental power. Guan Feihong nodded silently. Then, Ling Shiqi used the same trick again and cast a few illusions on Guan Feihong. This time, Guan Feihong gave up resisting, so it was easy to succeed. Guan Feihong immediately said, Sang Hetong asked me to find out if the Dark Thunder Guards and the Jingoist faction had fallen out. He also asked me to secretly stop the Dark Thunder Guards from investigating the king's death. Very good. Ling Shiqi was delighted. Find a chance to send a message to Sang He. Tell him that we and the Jingoist faction are like fire and water. As for the other matter, you can just drag it out slowly. Yes, master. Guan Feihong suddenly thought of something and said, right, yesterday, Sang Hetong secretly brought a large number of experts from the Gu God sect into the king's city. I don't know why. Ling Shiqi's heart jumped. Brought a large number of experts? What are their realms? They're all at the Sky Realm. I estimate that 80% of the Gu God sect's experts have been secretly arranged into the king's city. So it's like this. Ling Shiqi murmured. His eyes were shining. He was thinking that since most of the Gu God sect's experts were not at the Gu God Peak, then he could fish in troubled waters. Ling Shiqi had always remembered that his main purpose in coming to Zhu Lu country was not to complete the Thunderblaze dynasty's mission, but to collect a large number of Gu worms. Now that the back of the Gu God Peak was empty, there probably weren't many experts above the Spirit Aperture realm, so he decided to go there. In any case, he now had the right to act on his own, so he decided to make this trip. After that, Guan Feihong told Ling Shiqi everything he knew about Gushan Peak. After that, he put on his mask and left the city. The Gu God Peak was only a few dozen miles away from the imperial city of the Zhu Road. Ling Shiqi used his ghost steps and arrived at the Gu God Peak at the beginning of the night. According to Guan Feihong's description, Gu God Peak actually had a sect protecting formation, which was created by the previous sect master with countless efforts. Normally, this formation wouldn't reveal itself, but if it was activated, the entire Gu God Peak would be shrouded in poisonous fog. What Ling Shiqi cared about the most was the place where the Gu worms were cultivated. It was on the mountainside of Gu Shan Peak, where there were several deep caves dedicated to cultivating Gu worms. This was also the destination of Ling Shiqi's trip, but there were always experts guarding the caves, which was troublesome. There were also 2 spirit transformation realm disciples guarding the entrance of the Gu God Peak. Ling Shiqi bypassed them and entered the Gu God Peak. He opened his Byakugan and observed the surrounding spiritual aura. Sure enough, he found that there were only a few spirit pulse realm cultivators below the mountainside of the Gu God Peak. He easily avoided one Gu God sect disciple after another and went straight to the Gu worm cave. As he neared the mountainside, he immediately saw 2 auras of spirit aperture stage cultivators leaning against each other in the White Eye's field of vision. These 2 must be the people guarding the Gu worm nest. Ling Shiqi had opened 56 spirit veins and had several powerful spiritual techniques. He was confident that he could fight against an early-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator. But if it was 1 against 2, it was impossible. Moreover, this was the Gu God Peak. Once a fight broke out, it would immediately attract other Gu God sect disciples. So he couldn't use force, he could only use his wits. Outside the Gu worm cave, there was a male and female spirit aperture realm cultivator sitting cross-legged. Their bodies were glowing with a faint green light. They were obviously cultivating. All of a sudden, a mass of gray evil chi ghost shadow flashed and disappeared. The 2 opened their eyes at almost the same time. The female said, "Where did this evil spirit come from? How dare it cause trouble at the Gu God Peak?" Junior sister Qingbai, "Wait a moment, I'll go check it out." The male next to her stood up. Qingbai's expression was calm. She didn't say anything and just lightly nodded. The male immediately rushed towards the direction where the evil ghost figure disappeared. After a moment, another person wearing a chaotic mask appeared. This was naturally Ling Shiqi. He stood out so openly, Qingbai's eyes suddenly burst out with a cold light. "I knew it was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. I just happen to lack food for my Gu worms, so I'll use you to make up the numbers." Ling Shiqi said, "Senior sister, you misunderstood." "Who is your senior sister?" Qingbai's voice wasn't loud, but it made people feel as cold as winter. Ling Shiqi didn't say anything. He raised his hand and a green light flashed in his palm. There seemed to be a strange worm wriggling in the light. Qingbai's expression changed when she saw this. Gu devouring spirit technique. How do you know the Gu devouring spirit technique? Who the hell are you? Only the core disciples of the Gu God sect were qualified to cultivate this technique. Moreover, they had to be extremely talented disciples. Even Qingbai didn't have the opportunity to cultivate this technique. At this moment, she suddenly saw a stranger with the Gu devouring spirit technique. How could she not be shocked? The technique was naturally passed down to me by the sect leader. It's not convenient for me to reveal my identity, but senior sister just needs to know that I'm not an outsider. Ling Shiqi said lightly. Qingbai showed a suspicious expression. She didn't believe Ling Shiqi's words, but the technique on his body couldn't be fake. There was no doubt that it was the Gu devouring spirit technique. Qingbai asked, "In that case, what are you doing here?" "Of course, to get some Gu worms." "Do you have the Gu God token?" Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he heard the words, Gu God token. He remembered that Guan Feihong had mentioned the Gu God token to him. He couldn't help laughing. "Senior sister, you must be joking. The Gu God token has always been in the hands of the sect leader. How can I have it?" Qingbai's eyes flashed. She didn't get the Gu God token. She continued, "If you want to get the Gu worms, you have to go into the Gu worm cave to get rid of them. Do you dare to go in?" Qingbai made a hand seal, and a small mound behind her split open, revealing a large hole. One could see that there were all kinds of goo worms inside, and it looked extremely terrifying. Ling Shiqi's face under the mask turned slightly pale. Since he dared to come here, he was naturally prepared. He immediately nodded and said, "Of course." Chapter 363. In fact, if a disciple came and went, they would at least need a token. However, Ling Shiqi didn't have anything. It was impossible to take the goo with just his mouth. Even if he had the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, it was still impossible. Moreover, the disciple didn't need to enter the cave with the token. The person in charge of guarding the cave just needed to take out the goo according to the list on the token. The reason why Qingbai let Ling Shiqi enter was to test whether Ling Shiqi's 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique was real or not. After all, there were many strange things in this world. Maybe she could imitate the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. Therefore, she also wanted to see if Ling Shiqi dared to enter the cave. Could he collect the goo after entering? 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique was a technique that specialized in controlling goo. With this technique, 10,000 goo couldn't invade. He would definitely be fine if he entered the cave. If this cultivation method was fake, then it would naturally be eaten to death by countless goo worms. Qingbai was a little surprised when she saw Ling Shiqi agree so readily. She secretly wondered if she was overthinking it. But out of caution, she still had to do this. After all, her senior brother had just left and Ling Shiqi appeared. This was too much of a coincidence. Under Qingbai's watchful gaze, Ling Shiqi walked into the goo worm cave. There was no place to stand, because everywhere he looked was filled with goo worms. Ling Shiqi used the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique and instantly felt a sense of familiarity with the countless goo. Moreover, the goo no longer rejected Ling Shiqi. Instead, they happily rushed over. Looking at the countless goo of different colors, Ling Shiqi didn't reject them all. He had studied goo worms before. The goo worms that could be nurtured in this goo worm cave were all common goo worms. The truly precious goo worms had to be nurtured by oneself. And Ling Shiqi didn't need goo worms with offensive abilities. It would be best if they had all kinds of strange abilities. Thus, Ling Shiqi was also observing these goo worms. Soon, he found a group of purple goo worms that looked like spiders. This type of goo worm was called the poisonous spider goo. If it was used together with the goo spirit spider web, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Ling Shiqi waved his hand, and dozens of poisonous spider goo crawled up his arm, breaking through his skin and entering his body. Strangely, there was no wound on Ling Shiqi's arm, nor was there any blood. This was the unique characteristic of the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, feeding the goo with one's own body. Seeing this, Qingbai was finally relieved. Although she didn't know Ling Shiqi's identity, the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill was real. Next, Ling Shiqi discovered a type of goo called the meridian sucking goo. This type of goo would attach itself to the meridians after it entered the body and continuously suck away at the meridians. However, it would not destroy the meridians for a short period of time. That kind of inhuman pain was enough to make one shudder in fear. This meridian sucking goo could be used to replace the centipede curse. Then, Ling Shiqi chose the goo that he liked in the cave. As time passed, Qingbai's expression became more and more shocked. Because even if it was her, she could not stay in the goo worm cave for so long. At this time, the senior brother who just left also came back. He saw someone enter the cave and asked Qingbai, "Junior sister Qing, who is that person?" Qingbai retracted her gaze and shook her head. "I don't know, but he has the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill. He must be a disciple that some elder secretly took in." The senior brother was shocked when he heard that Ling Shiqi had the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill, but his eyes immediately turned into unwillingness and greed. He said in a low voice, "Junior sister, this person has a shady background. The evil aura phantom that floated away just now might have been made by him. He wanted to lure me away." "I know. Cheng Bai's expression was slightly cold. The senior brother frowned. Then why did you let him enter the cave? This time, Cheng Bai ignored him. The senior brother's eyes flashed and he said in realization, so junior sister wants to use the cave to test whether he is real or not. Junior sister is really considerate. However, his identity is still too suspicious. I think we should still report this matter. If there is a problem, we won't be punished. Cheng Bai still didn't say anything and only nodded lightly. The senior brother's mouth twitched and he snorted. He didn't say anything else, but his eyes kept flickering as he stared at Leng Shiqi. After half an hour, Leng Shiqi had already hidden over 1,000 gu in his body. It wasn't until he couldn't store any more that he reluctantly walked out. He saw the senior brother and sister as soon as he came out. He said, "Senior brother, senior sister, junior brother has already taken the gu, so I will take my leave." "Wait!" Senior brother suddenly shouted in a low voice. Leng Shiqi's footsteps paused and he turned around. "Senior brother, what do you think? You don't have our sex identity token, nor do you have the gu token. Junior sister Cheng is magnanimous and saw that you have the 10,000 gu devouring spirit skill, so she let you in. But if you don't give us a reason, don't even think about leaving." Speaking of this, the senior brother's eyes turned sinister. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly, "Humph, I gave you face and called you senior brother. You are Lord sect leader and are plotting something big, and I am a key part of it. As for my identity? If you really know my identity, I'm afraid even you will be killed. Do you still want to know?" The senior brother was shocked by Leng Shiqi's words. He couldn't tell if Leng Shiqi was telling the truth or not. Sect leader Sang He Tong was indeed plotting something big recently, and he needed the help of an outsider. Could this person be a key part of the sect leader's plan? It's fine if you don't believe me. After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, a strange rhythm came from his mouth. When the gu worms in the gu worm cave heard this sound, they all wriggled out excitedly. Cheng and Bai exclaimed at the same time, "Imperial gu demonic sound." Immediately after, they looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Imperial gu demonic sound was a spiritual technique that only spirit aperture realm cultivators in the gu god sect could cultivate. This spiritual technique's rank was 4th level, neither high nor low. However, it could control gu in a large area, so only spirit aperture realm cultivators could cultivate it. The two of them also knew this spiritual technique, but what shocked them the most was that Leng Shiqi's imperial gu demonic sound was even more profound than theirs. A spirit aperture realm cultivator not only had the 10,000 gu devouring spirit skill, but also the imperial gu demonic sound. Furthermore, his cultivation level was even higher than theirs. At the very least, he was at the large success stage. Such a person was definitely a genius disciple that the sect should focus on nurturing. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "Now you should believe me." Chapter 364. Leng Shiqi used the perfect imperial demonic sound to shock Cheng Bai and Cheng Bai. Seeing that they didn't say anything, he said, "Senior brothers and sisters, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first." Cheng Bai didn't say anything. The senior brother frowned and seemed to be hesitating. Finally, he cupped his hands and said, "Junior brother, take care." Leng Shiqi walked past the two, but Cheng Bai was a little surprised by the senior brother's decision. When Leng Shiqi's figure completely disappeared, the senior brother said, "Junior sister Cheng, senior brother has something to do. Please don't take offense." Cheng Bai instantly guessed what he was going to do. "Senior brother Zhao Ying, there are some things that you shouldn't care about." Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He squeezed out 2 stiff smiles and said, "I'm just going back to get something." "Do as you wish." Zhao Ying looked in the direction Leng Shiqi left and quickly chased after him. After Leng Shiqi left, he knew that he wouldn't be able to get away so easily. However, since he had already completed the most important goal of this trip, he just needed to leave Gu God Peak as soon as possible. At that moment, he opened his supercilious eyes and instantly discovered Zhao Ying, who was rushing towards him. Ling Shiqi immediately used the ghostly spring steps and turned into a shadow. His speed was even faster than Zhao Ying, who was at the spirit aperture stage. However, things didn't go so smoothly. After a short while, a group of more than 10 people appeared in front of Ling Shiqi and blocked his way. As a result, Ling Shiqi had no choice but to sink into the ground. He was already familiar with this kind of operation. However, at that moment, something unexpected happened. Not long after Ling Shiqi sank into the ground, he accidentally triggered a restriction. Suddenly, there was a flash of golden light around him. Then, before he could resist, he was directly enveloped by the golden light and pulled into the array. Ling Shiqi suddenly felt dizzy. However, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. This was clearly something like a teleportation array. There was actually a teleportation formation hidden under the Gushan Peak. After the Ling Shiqi disappeared, Zhao Ying hurried over. His footsteps paused as he lowered his head and muttered with a frown, "Strange, the goo worm's aura suddenly disappeared here? Don't tell me that person can disappear into thin air." At this time, a group of goo god sect's disciples walked over. When they saw Zhao Ying, they all saluted. Zhao Ying immediately asked, "Have you seen a person wearing a mask?" Disciple did not see him. Zhao Ying's face immediately turned ashen. "No, I must report this to the sect leader." As for Ling Shiqi, he only felt the ground beneath his feet disappear, and then he came to a world of golden glass. He looked around and found that the golden light all came from the golden lakes that were everywhere. It was the surface of the lakes that reflected the golden light. He immediately opened the system map, but it was pitch black. This meant that he couldn't use fate to escape. Ling Shiqi's heart sank. However, since he came here for no reason, he had to find a way to escape as soon as possible. He squinted his eyes and saw a person sitting in the middle of the endless golden lake. From afar, the person's figure was as thin as a stick. His hair was disheveled, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. However, Ling Shiqi felt that this person's aura was similar to eunuch Gao's. This person was probably an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm. However, this person's hands and feet were bound by pale green chains. These chains were only as thick as a finger and did not look very sturdy. "Come here." An old voice came from the person's mouth. Ling Shiqi did not move. Instead, he took out the black jade sword. 90 demonic patterns climbed onto the sword's blade, and the spiritual energy in his body circulated. He was ready to activate the demonic beast blood pattern armor at any time. "Humph." The person snorted. To Ling Shiqi's horror, the demonic patterns on the sword's blade suddenly disappeared. Not only that, but more than half of the goo insects that he had just collected in his body died in an instant. This made his heart ache, and at the same time, he deeply understood how terrifying this person was. At this point, Ling Shiqi simply put away the black jade sword and walked in front of the person. He cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, senior." The person raised his head, revealing two completely different eyes. One of his eyes was pale green, and it was filled with a fierce light. The other eye had a faint golden light, and it was filled with kindness. Amitabha, Amitabha. This old man inadvertently killed hundreds of goo insects. It is a sin. Bah, this brat dares to show hostility to this leader. He deserves to die. These two sentences came out of the person's mouth one after another. Although the voice was the same, the tone was completely different. Ling Shiqi's eyebrows, which were hidden under the mask, twitched slightly. He thought to himself, does this person have schizophrenia? What he found strange was that this person could actually say, Amitabha. Wasn't this something that only Buddhist disciples in his previous life would say? This old man is called Tu Deng, and I am the previous leader of the Goo God sect. I am also the founder of the Goo God sect. The Goo God sect is mine, mine. This person's two consciousnesses spoke again, and these words shocked Ling Shiqi. So this person was actually the founder of the Goo God sect. Seeing Tu Deng imprisoned here, Ling Shiqi secretly guessed that the current leader, Sang Hetong, and Tu Deng definitely had some unspeakable secret. It was most likely that Sang Hetong wanted to usurp the throne, and he wanted to obtain something from Tu Deng, so he imprisoned him here. Tu Deng closed his green eyes, but that eye was still trembling. He said, "If you want to escape, let me talk to little friend." Only then did that eye calm down. Tu Deng's golden eyes immediately brightened. "Little friend, how should I address you?" "Junior, Lu Xingji." Ling Shiqi did not say his real name, nor did he make it up. "Little friend Lu, I'm sure you've already guessed it. This old man brought you here in hopes that you can help this old man escape." Ling Shiqi hesitated for a moment before saying, "Junior's cultivation is shallow. I do not know why Senior thinks I can do it." Tu Deng smiled, but perhaps he had not smiled for a long time. This smile was not only very stiff, it even looked a little scary. He said, "That unfilial disciple of mine, Sang Hetong, set up 3 seals here. The first one is these chains on my body. After several decades of research, this old man has found a way to break these chains. But once I break these chains, I will activate the second restriction, which is this boundless lake." Ling Shiqi looked around, but did not see anything special about this golden lake. Actually, this lake contains countless gold thread goo. Gold thread goo is a very special goo worm. Its existence can restrain 10,000 goo spirit-devouring technique. If I break these chains, the countless gold thread goo will surge over and devour me. But all things in the world have a counter, and metal attribute cultivation methods can restrain gold thread goo. Saying so, Tu Deng looked at Ling Shiqi with a burning gaze. Ling Shiqi's heart tightened. It seemed like his secret was seen through. Wasn't the extreme gold mystic yang technique he cultivated a metal attribute cultivation method? But he was surprised that he was clearly using 10,000 goose spirit devouring technique, but the other party could see that he also cultivated a metal attribute cultivation method. He thought deeper. Would Tu Deng be able to tell that he had cultivated even more techniques? Chapter 365. Tu Deng did not know what Ling Shiqi was thinking. He continued, "As for the third restriction, it is this world. This is a small-scale alternate space that I discovered by chance. That is why I built the Gu Divine sect here. This space originally had an exit, but now the exit has been sealed by Sang Hetong. Although this old man can attempt to break the seal, Sang Hetong will definitely detect it. Thus, I thought of setting up a teleportation formation. Unfortunately, this formation needs someone to operate it from the other side to bring me out." At this point, Tu Deng stopped and Ling Shiqi understood what he meant. Tu Deng had a way to break the first restriction, but he needed Ling Shiqi to block the golden silk goo and bring Tu Deng out from the outside. But what about after bringing him out? This was a Heaven Man Unity Realm mighty expert. After going out, he could casually kill him. As if he saw Ling Shiqi's apprehension, Tu Deng spoke again. But this time, Tu Deng's mouth did not move, his voice directly entered Ling Shiqi's ears. "Little friend, don't worry, I have already sworn that I will never kill again. But my evil thoughts will definitely not let little friend off, so little friend still needs to help me get rid of the other consciousness. Back then, when I was sealed here, my heart was filled with hatred. I only thought of revenge and gradually lost myself in hatred. Later, to escape, I created a metal attribute cultivation method, but metal attribute cultivation methods conflicted with 10,000 goose spirit devouring technique. They could not coexist. Thus, I comprehended a secret technique that allowed me to split my consciousness into 2 halves, separating all of my negative and dark emotions. That was how I formed my evil thoughts. However, the problem came along with it. Not only were we unable to coexist, but we were also constantly fighting for control of the body. If this continued, we would sooner or later perish together. I do not desire to live forever, but if I let the evil thoughts out, it will cause endless slaughter and sin. Unfortunately, even though I have the ability to kill him, I cannot do it, thus I can only trouble little friend." Ling Shiqi knew that Tu Deng's consciousness was split into good and evil thoughts. The one talking to him now was the good thoughts. This secret method was similar to his mind-splitting technique. Moreover, this good thoughts wanted to get rid of the evil thoughts. What shocked him was that Tu Deng kept talking about creating cultivation methods and secret techniques. He didn't take cultivation methods seriously at all. Furthermore, he was clearly trapped here, but he could still set up a teleportation formation. This ability was simply unheard of. Leng Shiqi's mind flashed with thousands of thoughts. If he could really get rid of the evil thoughts, it would be beneficial to him. His chances of survival would be higher. Regardless of whether this good thoughts Tu Deng was speaking the truth or not, at least, he was much better than the evil thoughts. Thus, he said, Junior does not know what can I do to help Senior. By saying this, he had agreed to free Tudun, and also agreed to help him get rid of his evil thoughts. However, Leng Shiqi did not know he had this ability. Tu Deng's good thoughts nodded. Little friend only needs to do two things. After this old man breaks the chains, use your 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique to attract the attention of the golden silk Gu. Then use a metal type cultivation method to block the golden silk Gu. Little friend only needs to last 3 to 4 breaths of time. After that, this old man will send little friend out, then little friend will use a secret method to bring me out. Leng Shiqi asked, Senior, aren't you afraid that this junior will run away after going out? Tu Deng smiled again, you won't. Why does Senior trust me so much? Leng Shiqi was also very confused. Because this old man has the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, this is a rank 8 cultivation method that can be cultivated to the heaven origin realm. Rank 8 cultivation method. Even with Leng Shiqi's strong will, he could not help but be moved. One had to know that the blood slaughter 7 fiend art he cultivated was only a rank 7 cultivation method. Although he also had the 5 god flowing light art and the 1000 reincarnation illusory world art, these two cultivation methods might not be lower than rank 8. However, these two cultivation methods were not complete. The 5 god flowing light art needed to break through a large realm to obtain the next level of the cultivation method. As for the next level of the 1000 reincarnation illusory world art, it was also in Ozu's mind. Therefore, a complete rank 8 cultivation method was indeed very attractive to Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi still had a trace of doubt. Is Senior speaking the truth? Tu Deng said, of course, this old man never lies, because the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was created by me. The reason why Sang Hetong did not kill me was because he wanted to obtain the last level of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique from me. This old man also cultivated the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique in the metal type cultivation method, so I could sense little friend's aura. Hiss. When Leng Shiqi heard this, he could not help but secretly gasp. Tu Deng was actually the creator of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. This was a person who could create a rank 8 cultivation method. Just now, when Tu Deng said that he had created the metal type cultivation method and the secret method to separate consciousness, Leng Shiqi was only slightly surprised, but now, his heart was truly shaken. Leng Shiqi immediately said in a clear voice, this junior will definitely help Senior Tu Deng escape. Good. Tu Deng nodded and said, this old man will teach you the method to control the teleportation formation. Tu Deng stretched out his hand, and a wisp of golden light entered Leng Shiqi's forehead. Immediately, 2 sets of chants appeared in Leng Shiqi's mind. One set was naturally the chants to control the teleportation formation, while the other was the secret method to wipe out evil thoughts. This secret method was called the Void Annihilation Divine Blade, specialized in cutting all kinds of illusory spiritual bodies, primordial spirits, souls, and thoughts. Seeing this Void Annihilation Divine Blade, Leng Shiqi's eyes kept flickering. Perhaps he would also need this secret method in the near future. At this moment, in his opinion, the Void Annihilation Divine Blade was even more important than the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. Leng Shiqi said, Senior, please wait for a moment, this junior needs to practice this technique first. Tu Deng smiled kindly, no problem, the method to control the teleportation formation is a bit complicated, and this old man has been trapped here for decades, a little while won't make a difference, little friend, you can slowly learn it. Then, Leng Shiqi didn't say anything, and directly sat down cross-legged. He used his unlimited skill points to instantly learn the teleportation formation method. However, he didn't use his skill points to learn the Void Annihilation Divine Blade. Instead, he relied on his own ability to learn this secret method. This was because if he used his unlimited skill points, it was equivalent to borrowing the power of the system. This Void Annihilation Divine Blade was one of his trump cards against the system in the future. Of course, he had to learn it himself. After nearly a day, Ling Shiqi finally completely understood the Void Annihilation Divine Blade. He opened his eyes and said, "Senior, we can begin." Chapter 366. Tu Deng was surprised to see Ling Shiqi comprehending 2 spells in half a day. At this time, the evil thought ran out and said, "Just a mere teleportation formation spell, you took so long to learn it, truly stupid." Ling Shiqi coughed dryly. He put on an act and said with an awkward tone, "Junior's aptitude is slow. I have embarrassed myself in front of Senior." Tu Deng's good thought said, "Then let's begin." Ling Shiqi silently retreated until he was dozens of feet away. Next, golden and green runes appeared on Tu Deng's body. These runes quickly crawled onto the chains that were trapping him. Soon after, the chains began to shake rapidly, making ding ding dang 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 sounds. Not only that, but patterns that resembled goo worms also appeared on the chains. Ling Shiqi squinted. He could see that Tu Deng's strength was much stronger than the chains. It was only a matter of time before Tu Deng broke free. However, just as Tu Deng broke free of the chains, ripples suddenly appeared on the golden lake beneath their feet. Countless buzzing sounds came from below the lake. It seemed like something was coming out. Tu Deng suddenly shouted, "Not good. The golden silk goo is more sensitive than before. Little friend Lu, this old man still needs at least half an incense stick's worth of time to succeed. You must hold on." Ling Shiqi's eyes twitched. Tu Deng said he only needed to hold on for a few breaths of time, but now it was extended to 15 minutes. Although those golden silk goo had not completely come out, Ling Shiqi could feel the terrifying aura of goo worms surrounding him. Ling Shiqi was anxious, but he did not panic. He said, "Senior, this is not the price we agreed on. Give me the method to cultivate and remove mind-controlling goo." Tu Deng did not expect Ling Shiqi to still have the mind to bargain at this time, but since Ling Shiqi dared to say this, it meant he had some confidence. Tu Deng immediately agreed. Next, Ling Shiqi activated the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique with all his might, his body emitting traces of green light. All of the golden silk goo were attracted by the aura of the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique and surged towards Ling Shiqi like waves. Even Ling Shiqi felt his scalp turning numb when he saw these countless golden silk goo. Soon after, he changed his cultivation method, and at the same time, circulated the golden mystic yang art. The light on his body also became a mixture of gold and green like Tu Deng's. Ling Shiqi raised his palms to the sky. Dense golden light gathered, and a golden sun appeared in this space. Bright sun mystic yang palm. However, Ling Shiqi did not strike out with his palm. Instead, he kept it in his hand. Countless golden thread goo wriggled over, but before they could even get close, they were turned into ashes by the golden radiance. However, Ling Shiqi was also using the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, constantly attracting the golden silk goo. They were like moths flying into a flame, one after another, but in the end, they all disappeared from the world. When Tu Deng saw this scene, he was slightly surprised. With his experience, he could see that Ling Shiqi had already cultivated the glorious sun mystic yang palm to the great perfection stage. That was why he was able to store it and not release it, and it didn't consume too much spiritual energy. Soon after, his expression became relaxed. Ling Shiqi's state attracted almost all of the golden thread goo, and as long as he had enough spirit energy, not to mention half an incense's time, he could even hold on for an hour. He could not help but think, I underestimated him. Thus, Tu Deng's good and evil thoughts began to break free from the shackles of the chains. Time passed quickly, but it also passed slowly. Because Ling Shiqi was consuming large amounts of spirit energy at every moment. Although he had cultivated the glorious sun mystic yang palm to perfection, it was still a rank 5 spirit technique. With his current cultivation, using it for a long time was still a bit taxing. At this moment, his forehead was already covered in sweat. Fortunately, he also heard a bang sound. Following that, several similar sounds were heard. Leng Shiqi knew that Tudong had succeeded. Sure enough, Tudong raised his arms and rose from the ground. His whole body emitted a soaring aura. What was even more shocking was that his figure actually stopped in mid-air and did not descend. Standing in the air. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. This was clearly an ability that only a Sky Yuan realm expert could have, but Tudong could actually do it. Tudong said to Leng Shiqi, "Little friend Lu, it's done. I'll send you to the outside world now." "Wait." Leng Shiqi shook his head. Then he stopped using the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique and put away the glorious sun mystic Yang Palm. Instantly, countless golden silk Gu rushed over. Leng Shiqi's expression did not change. He stretched out his hand and took the initiative to absorb hundreds of golden silk Gu into his body. When he had just arrived here, most of the Gu worms that he had painstakingly selected from the Gu worm cave were killed by Tudong's evil thoughts. Now, he could replenish them. Moreover, although this golden silk Gu was very weak and could be restrained by metal attribute cultivation methods, it could also restrain the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. He was now involved in the conspiracy of the Gu god sex leader, Sang He Tong. He might encounter people who cultivated this technique in the future. At that time, this golden silk Gu would be one of his trump cards. Tudong did not say anything. After Leng Shiqi collected enough golden silk Gu, Tudong's hands continuously formed seals on Leng Shiqi's body. "Little friend Lu needs to teleport me out as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the golden silk Gu finds me, I will die." Leng Shiqi nodded silently. Then, he felt the world spinning and returned to the outside world. When Leng Shiqi went out, he found that he had already left the Gu God Peak. But he was not too far away because the Gu God Peak was still in his vision. It was estimated to be about 10 miles away. Looking at the sky, it should be the afternoon of the second day. At this time, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry to teleport Tudong out. Instead, he used his fastest speed to set up a lightning destruction formation and hundreds of golden silk Gu. He could not fully believe Tudong's words. Now that he had returned to the outside world, the system map could be used normally. He could also activate the Destiny skill. If Tudong kept his word and gave him the cultivation method, it would be fine. But if Tudong wanted to kill him, the lightning destruction formation and golden silk Gu could buy him some time. As long as he could hold on for a breath's time, he could teleport away. After he arranged everything, his hands started to form seals. Then, a small formation appeared in front of him. Following that, Tudong's figure appeared. As soon as he came out, Shan Nian winked at Leng Shiqi. Chapter 367. The moment Tudong appeared, the evil intention's eyes flashed with green light. He stared at Leng Shiqi with killing intent. Meanwhile, Tudong Shan's eyes suddenly released golden light. He shot out a golden light that enveloped an area of 10 zhang. He shouted, "Little friend Lu, quickly." Leng Shiqi did not hesitate. His mental power surged out, directly invading Tudong's mental space. Logically speaking, with Leng Shiqi's cultivation and mental power strength, he should not be able to invade the mental space of a Unity of Heaven realm. However, Tudong Shan's mind emptied and allowed Leng Shiqi in. And in Tudong's mental space, there were two figures facing each other. One of them was filled with negative emotions such as resentment, anger, and revenge. The other was suffused with a faint golden light, giving people the feeling of being bathed in spring breeze. These two figures were Tudong's evil intention and good intention. Tudong's evil intention roared malevolently, "What is the meaning of this? It is impossible to get rid of me. You and I are equal in strength, neither of us can do anything to the other. Quickly let me kill that brat. It has been too long since I tasted meat. I am too hungry." Tudong Shan's evil intention sighed deeply. "This is the old me from back then, being trapped for a few decades. Perhaps it is heaven's punishment for me. I should be punished. You are right, I will not kill you, but there is someone else who can." The moment he finished, Ling Shiqi's figure appeared between the two of them. Tu Dang's evil intentions expression changed. He said crazily, You actually emptied your mind. Do you want to die? No, the one who should die is you, AI. It is not that this old man cannot kill you. It is that I cannot do it. You are a part of me, even if you are filled with evil, you still have your own consciousness. This old man has already decided not to kill anyone, so I will have to trouble little friend Lu to do it. Ha ha ha. The evil intention laughed wildly, hypocrite to the extreme. Did you not kill many people back then? In order to make the Gu gods sect the national religion of Zhu Lu country, you have personally massacred several sects. Now you are showing fake mercy, disgusting. Besides, even if this sect master was standing here, this brat wouldn't be able to kill me. The good spirits suddenly formed a spiritual seal with one hand, and a stream of light instantly connected him and the evil spirit together. The evil spirit's body stiffened, and it couldn't move. No matter how he struggled, he maintained the same posture as kindness. Goodness closed its eyes, as if it did not want to see the end of evil spirit. Ling Shiqi walked in front of the evil spirit. The evil spirit couldn't move now, but it still smiled at Ling Shiqi and said, Ignorant boy, you can't kill me. When I get out, I will eat you alive. Ling Shiqi didn't say anything. He used his palm as a knife and gently swung it down. He didn't see him wave anything, but a black line as thin as a hair suddenly appeared in the space between him and the evil spirit. The black line continued to extend until it reached the back of the evil spirit. What was even more strange was that the space near the evil spirit was actually separated. Like a mirror that was split in half, the upper half and the lower half staggered, and the person in the mirror was also split in half. The evil spirit was easily split in half. This was the void destruction divine blade. The evil spirit's grin instantly froze, and then his figure began to dissipate. His face was full of endless resentment. He opened his mouth wide, but he couldn't make a sound, and finally completely dissipated. Ling Shiqi was also a bit stunned. He also couldn't believe that he killed the evil spirit so easily. At the same time, he also had greater expectations for the void destruction divine blade. Goodness opened his eyes, but at this time, his eyes were full of sadness and a bit of regret. He said weakly, Little friend Lu, you can go out first. Ling Shiqi nodded, and then he withdrew his spirit power, and his consciousness returned to his body. And he unexpectedly found that Tu Dang's aura was rapidly falling. Even the realm of unity of heaven and man was a bit unstable. Senior, this is? Tu Dang waved his hand and said, The evil spirit is a part of me. Cutting off the evil spirit is equivalent to cutting off a part of my cultivation. But since it can solve a big problem and prevent people from dying, a mere cultivation is nothing. Hearing Tu Dang's words, Ling Shiqi felt a bit strange. It wasn't that Tu Dang was strange, but that Tu Dang gave him a familiar feeling. This feeling was like those senior monks in his previous life. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi's heart moved. He immediately remembered that there were hundreds of Buddhist scriptures in his mustard seed bracelet. These Buddhist scriptures were very compatible with Tu Dang, causing a different kind of thought to emerge in his mind. Ling Shiqi cupped his hands and asked, Senior, since you have escaped, do you want to get rid of Sang and Tong and take back the Gu God sect? If Tu Dang really had this idea, Ling Shiqi felt that they could work together to deal with Sang and Tong. If Tu Dang didn't have this idea, then it would confirm Ling Shiqi's thought. Tu Dang sighed slightly and said, This old man's hatred for Sang and Tong has dissipated along with the evil spirit. Moreover, the Gu God sect is just a worldly possession. This old man only wants to wander the world and do good deeds to make up for the sins this old man has committed in the past. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi felt that Tu Dang really had the demeanor of a senior monk. Thus, he took out the first part of the Vajra Prajna Paramitha Sutra and gave it to Tu Dang. Tu Dang took it with a slightly puzzled expression. He didn't know why Ling Shiqi did this, but when he casually flipped to a page, his eyes suddenly focused as if he was attracted by the contents. As Tu Dang watched, he gradually became immersed. Ling Shiqi's eyes revealed a look of interest. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back and waited quietly at the side. Next, there was only the sound of the book being flipped. There wasn't much content in this Buddhist sutra, but Tu Deng read it very carefully. It took him a long time to finish reading. But to Ling Shiqi's surprise, Tu Deng actually started reading again. After repeating this several times, just when Ling Shiqi was a little impatient, Tu Deng finally raised his head. At this moment, his eyes were full of excitement. He said in surprise, This book can be called a divine book. This old man has never heard of it before, but this old man faintly feels that this is the direction this old man is pursuing. Little friend Lu, where did you get this divine book? Do you have anything else? Ling Shiqi didn't answer, but changed the topic and said, Senior Tu Deng, let's not talk about this book for now. Shouldn't we complete the last part of the deal? Of course, he was referring to the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, as well as the method to refine and remove the mind control Gu. Tu Deng patted his head without caring about his image and said, This old man was confused. Little friend, please don't resist. Saying so, he pointed a finger and a golden light entered between Ling Shiqi's eyebrows like last time. He directly sent the things he agreed to into Ling Shiqi's mind. Ling Shiqi accepted this information and smiled in satisfaction. Meeting Tu Deng was an accident, but his harvest was also not bad. Little friend, this old man knows that you must have the follow-up to the Vajraprajnaparamita Sutra. Although this book isn't a cultivation method or spirit technique, this old man likes it. How about this? This old man will make another deal with you. Ling Shiqi smiled, of course. Chapter 368. Ling Shiqi and Tu Deng quickly came to an agreement. Ling Shiqi also got what he wanted, so he gave the complete set of Vajraprajnaparamita Sutra to Tu Deng. This Buddhist sutra was completely useless in his hands, so if he could exchange it for some benefits, he could be considered to have profited greatly. As for Tu Deng, it was as if he had obtained a treasure. He directly ignored Ling Shiqi and immersed himself in the world of the scriptures. As for Ling Shiqi, he felt a little awkward. He coughed dryly and said, Then this junior will take his leave. Tu Deng waved his hand, and a door opened in the golden light that enveloped them. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed. He took back the golden silk Gu that was hidden underground and left. During this process, Tu Deng didn't even raise his head. After walking out of the light, Ling Shiqi turned around. Where was the golden light behind him? There was only a ball of air. Ling Shiqi immediately used ghostly spring steps to leave this place. Then, he used the destiny skill to teleport back to the Imperial City. He was quite satisfied with this trip to Gushan Peak. First of all, he collected many Gu worms with different abilities. Although Tu Deng's matter was an accident, the result was that he earned a rank 8 cultivation method. This complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was very profound, but it wasn't very compatible with Ling Shiqi. Thus, he didn't plan to cultivate it as his main cultivation method. The only pity was that he didn't get any valuable information. Ling Shiqi immediately used the destiny skill. The system map was infinitely enlarged, and the entire Imperial City and Gushan Peak were within his teleportation range. Just as he was about to teleport back to the Imperial City, a familiar yet unfamiliar figure appeared. That was Imo Huaishou. Or rather, Princess Carol. Ling Shiqi continued to enlarge the system map. He found that Imo Huaishou wasn't wearing that strange mask. He could even clearly see that Imo Huaishou's beautiful face had some anxiety as she rushed towards Gushan Peak. After he found out that Imo Huaishou was the princess of Zhu Lu country, he specially went to find out more about the princess. Imo Huaishou, or rather, Princess Carol, was the only child of the king and Fei Wang. The current king did not have any sons in his life. He only had this one daughter, which could be considered a miracle. Thus, the king and his wife had always doted on Princess Carol. Since she was interested in the art of Gu, they had imperial preceptor Sang Hedong take her in as a disciple and teach her the supreme art of Gu. She loved to travel, so he spent a large amount of resources to create a mysterious mask for her that could change her appearance, allowing her to walk freely in the Thunderblaze dynasty. It could be said that he was doted on by thousands of people. However, now that the king had died suddenly, and the princess consort had intervened in the battle for the throne, she was in a precarious situation, and her position as a princess was about to come to an end. Ling Shiqi found it strange that yesterday, Yu Ruifeng and the others entered the palace to investigate the king's death. Today, Princess Carol rushed to Gugad Peak in a hurry. Could there be a connection between the two? Then, Ling Shiqi's eyes turned, and his body was teleported to the path that Imo Huaishou had to pass through. After landing on the ground, he took off his mask. Crackling sounds could be heard from his body, and his body became even thinner. He put on the human skin mask of Zhua Qiuyu, and began to wait for Imo Huaishou's arrival. Not long after, Princess Carol galloped over on a divine spirit horse. However, she suddenly pulled on the reins. Whoa! The horse raised its 2 hooves and paused in midair for a few seconds before landing. Princess Carol's blue eyes were filled with vigilance. Her clear voice rang out, "Who's sneaking around?" "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect Princess Carol to be so vigilant. I admire you." A figure emerged from the ground in front of Princess Carol. It was Ling Shiqi in disguise. Princess Carol's face darkened when she saw Ling Shiqi's appearance. Ling Shiqi's current appearance was Zhua Qiuyu. Although it wasn't his original appearance, she could tell that he wasn't from Zhu Lu country at a glance. When Princess Carol saw that Ling Shiqi's cultivation was only at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, her eyes flashed with disdain. However, she didn't lower her vigilance. This was because she had met 3 Spirit Pulse realm cultivators who could fight against Spirit Aperture realm cultivators in the West Desolate Province's Mist Chi City. However, she had important matters to attend to and didn't want to delay. She said coldly, "I don't care who you are or why you're waiting for me here. I only have one thing to say. If you don't move, you'll die." However, Ling Shiqi turned a deaf ear to her words and still stood there without moving. Princess Carol's eyes shot out waves of killing intent. She pointed her fingers, and rays of green light intertwined to form a giant net that attacked. Ling Shiqi formed a seal with one hand and his entire body emitted a dense underworld cold aura. It formed a 3-meter-tall strange handprint that brazenly fell down. This was a rank 5 spiritual skill from the Cold Underworld Treasure Manual, Cold Underworld Giant Handprint. The Cold Underworld Giant Handprint brought with it a boundless cold aura. In 2 breaths of time, it shattered Princess Carol's green net and continued to press forward. Ling Shiqi had opened up a few more spirit veins compared to the last time they fought outside Mist Chi City. In addition, he cultivated the Cold Underworld Treasure Manual, a rank 5 cultivation technique. His spirit energy was even denser than before. In terms of strength, he wasn't inferior to a Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. Princess Carol's expression finally changed. She had never expected the Cold Underworld Giant Handprint to be so powerful. What she didn't expect was that she would meet a Spirit Pulse realm cultivator whose strength was comparable to a Spirit Aperture realm cultivator today. Princess Carol stepped on the stirrups and her figure soared into the sky like a white crane. Suddenly, hundreds of goo worms appeared behind her and formed a pair of flesh wings. She paused in the air for a few breaths of time, causing Ling Shiqi's Cold Underworld Giant Handprint to only hit the spirit horse. The spirit horse's corpse was instantly frozen, but this ice was grayish-black and was still constantly devouring the spirit horse's corpse. In the blink of an eye, only bones were left of the spirit horse. What a vicious cultivation technique. Princess Carol's eyes became more dignified. She had to re-examine the person who stopped her. Ling Shiqi was also a little surprised when he saw the pair of wings on Princess Carol's back. He remembered that she didn't have such a technique the last time they met outside the Mist Chi City. It seemed like she had just cultivated it recently. Ling Shiqi changed his voice and said, "Princess Carol's temper is so irritable. You've lost your dignity as a princess." Princess Carol frowned. She wasn't in King's City for many years. Even if she did appear, she rarely showed her true face. It could be said that there were very few people who knew her true identity. However, Ling Shiqi had revealed her identity. How could she not be shocked? "Who are you? Why did you stop me?" she asked with a heavy tone. Ling Shiqi smiled. "I am Zhuo Qiuyu. I came here while traveling. I suddenly heard that His Majesty the King had passed away, so I came here to save Her Highness the Princess." "Save me? What a joke. Of course, I can also harm the princess." "Oh, no, I should say the great thief Don Huisho." When Ling Shiqi said this, Princess Carol turned pale with fright. Chapter 369. When Princess Carol heard Ling Shiqi's words, a huge wave was set off in her heart. If there were only a few people who knew her true appearance, then there was only one person who knew that she was Imo Huisho. That was her mother, Princess Bess. Other than that, there was no third person who knew about this. More importantly, if this news reached the ears of the Dark Thunder Guards, then the Princess Bess would completely become the Dark Thunder Guards' enemy. It would even implicate the entire Zhu Lu country. The consequences were simply unimaginable. Princess Carol looked deeply at Ling Shiqi, boundless killing intent rising in her heart. Ling Shiqi gave a mysterious smile and said, "Princess Carol, or Imo Huisho, the information I have is far beyond your imagination. If I'm not wrong, the Dark Thunder Guards entered the palace yesterday to investigate the cause of the king's death. I'm afraid that they found out about the Princess Bess." Princess Bess really lifted a stone and smashed it on her own foot. "Of course, you can also try to kill me, if you can." Princess Carol increasingly felt that the person in front of her was very mysterious. It seemed that there was nothing he didn't know. Many people knew that the Dark Thunder Guards entered the palace, but the results of their investigation showed that no more than 10 people knew about it. How did the other party find out about all these extremely secretive matters? How did he find out about all of this? Ling Shiqi looked at Princess Carol's expression and knew that he had guessed correctly. He had been at Gu God Peak for more than a day. How could he know about the palace? He just linked all the things together and made a judgment. Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song were both outstanding talents in the Dark Thunder Guards. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their current high positions. After entering the palace, they must have found some clues that were unfavorable to the Princess Bess. Otherwise, why would Princess Carol leave the city in such a panic? The Princess Bess was her only support now, so something that could make her panic must have happened to the Princess Bess. The killing intent in Princess Carol's heart grew stronger. She said, "What do you want?" "As I said earlier, I can help your highness or harm Imo Huisho," Ling Shiqi said. "The choice is actually in your highness' hands." Princess Carol's expression changed several times. The feeling of being manipulated was very uncomfortable. She was also in a hurry to go to the Gu God Peak and didn't want to delay any longer. However, Ling Shiqi's words gave her too much shock and threat, so she had no choice but to stop here. She said with a sullen face, "I naturally hope that your excellency can help me, but I don't know how your excellency will help me, and what do you need me to pay?" Ling Shiqi straightened his sleeves and said leisurely, "This one is helping Princess Carol keep all of this a secret." "Isn't this helping Her Highness?" Princess Carol finally understood. It turned out that this person was here to get something without risking anything. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "What do you want, Your Excellency? Please tell me directly. Your Highness is truly intelligent, to be able to see through my thoughts in an instant. I'm impressed." Ling Shiqi smiled, "I'm just curious about the goo worms on Your Highness." "Goo worm?" Princess Carol was dazed at first, but then her expression turned gloomy. For people who cultivated goo techniques, goo worms were their second lives. If they nurtured a powerful goo worm suitable for themselves, their battle strength would increase greatly. Similarly, if they lost their goo worms, their battle strength would decrease greatly. Thus, people who cultivated goo techniques placed great importance on their goo worms. This was like a sword cultivator's sword, they couldn't allow others to covet it. At the same time, she had some doubts. Although she had only fought with Leng Shiqi once, she could sense that Leng Shiqi cultivated a cold cultivation method. Then what did he need goo worms for? Thus, she asked, Your Excellency doesn't cultivate goo techniques, what do you need goo worms for? Leng Shiqi wasn't willing to answer and said coldly, Your Highness, you only need to answer whether I agree or not. You. Princess Carol had never suffered such humiliation before. She was about to speak when Leng Shiqi spoke first. I only want 10 spirit-devouring goo worms and those goo worms that can turn into wings. With these, I can guarantee that I will immediately leave Zhu Lu country and the news of you being Mo Hui Shou will be kept forever. What did you say? Princess Carol spat out these words one by one. Not to mention how precious those spirit-devouring goo were and how hard it was for her to nurture them. There was also that goo worm that could turn into wings. It was the soaring sky goo that the princess had spent a large amount of resources to exchange for. She had only used it once, how could she give it to someone else? Moreover, even if she gave it to him, how could she be sure that he wasn't lying to her? At this time, Leng Shiqi saw that she was deep in thought and continued, I have to remind your highness that you don't have much time. Hearing this, Princess Carol clenched her fists tightly. She knew that her time was precious. She had already been delayed for a while and her spirit horse had died. If she didn't hurry to Gushan Peak now, her mother would really be in danger. Suddenly, she realized that she seemed to have experienced this situation before. She recalled that she had also met a mysterious person outside Lan Chi City who was also at the late stage of Spirit Vein Realm. He had also used information to threaten her. Princess Carol couldn't help but show some suspicion. Were there too many mysterious people in this world, or was she so unlucky to always meet such people? Or could it be that there was no connection between the two of them? She didn't forget that she had once handed over the 10,000 spirit-devouring goo technique in Lan Chi City. Now, someone was asking for goo worms from her. This was too much of a coincidence. However, these two people's cultivation methods were completely different. They were even polar opposites, so it was impossible for them to be the same person. Leng Shiqi saw the suspicion in Princess Carol's eyes and his heart tightened. He was afraid that she would guess something, so he coldly snorted and said, Princess Carol, Your Highness, you still need to think carefully. It seems that Your Highness still needs to consider it slowly. Then I'll go to the post house in King City. I believe that the Dark Thunder Guards should be more generous. Princess Carol instantly collected all her thoughts. She looked slightly flustered and hurriedly shouted, Wait. I can agree to your conditions, but how can you guarantee that you won't leak it out? This one has always been a man of his word. Or rather, everyone in our organization is a man of his word. I think Your Highness should have experienced it in Lan Chi City. Leng Shiqi was full of nonsense and forced himself to come up with an organization. Princess Carol was shocked, he really is in cahoots with the person who stopped me in Lan Chi City. However, she believed it because after the last transaction, she had indeed successfully escaped from the Western Desolate Province. After hesitating for a while, she said, I can give you goo worms, but I have a condition. Chapter 370. The reason why Leng Shiqi came up with this organization was actually a little helpless, because he was always pulling wool from a sheep. And just now, Princess Carol had already begun to suspect him, so he simply made up an organization, which could not only cover up the lie, but also make Princess Carol feel more at ease giving him the goo worms. Hearing that Princess Carol still had conditions, he pretended to be displeased and said, Let's hear it. Your Excellency wants to get the spirit-devouring goo and the soaring sky goo with just one mouth. The value of each of these goo worms is no less than a 5th-tier spirit weapon. Shouldn't Your Excellency take out something? Leng Shiqi said coldly, Your Highness, are you bargaining? On the other hand, I can slowly negotiate with Your Highness for an entire day without any problems. However, Your Highness doesn't seem to have so much time. This time, Princess Ka Luo smiled and said, I knew you would say that. My condition is very simple. Right now, most of the experts in the Goo God Peak are not here. At most, there are a few Spirit Aperture Realm spirit cultivators guarding it. Your Excellency only needs to help me lure those people out. Of course, the more people you lure out, the better. As long as Your Excellency agrees, I can give you the spirit-devouring goo and the soaring sky goo now. After the matter is done, I can also give you a mind control goo. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi was really moved. He had personally experienced the power of the mind control goo, so he naturally thought of it. And he also guessed that Princess Carol probably wanted to sneak into the Goo God Peak to get something, but he couldn't easily believe her. Princess Carol has the mind control goo? Not now, but when Your Excellency leads away the spirit cultivators on the Goo God Peak, there will be. Princess Carol chuckled. With my insignificant cultivation base, how can I hold back several Spirit Aperture Realm experts? Your Highness, you must be joking. Your Excellency comes and goes like a ghost. I don't think this matter will be difficult for Your Excellency. Moreover, Your Excellency knows what the mind control goo is. As long as you can lure away the experts of the Goo God Peak for a period of time, you will be able to get it. You will make a lot of money. Ling Shiqi pondered for a moment. He calculated that he wouldn't lose anything in this deal. Moreover, it wouldn't be troublesome to lure those experts away. He nodded and said, "Deal." Next, Princess Ka Luo straightforwardly took out 10 spirit-devouring goo and over 100 soaring sky goo, saying, "I believe you are a man of your words, let's go to Gushan Peak now. To be able to travel together with Your Highness, it is the blessing of 3 lifetimes. Unfortunately, I am used to traveling alone, so it is better for us to go our separate ways. Your Highness only needs to hide near Gushan Peak and wait for the right time." Okay, after the matter is done, let's meet at the pool 10 miles west of the Goo God Peak. After saying that, Princess Carol's spiritual power surged and she quickly left. Ling Shiqi looked at Princess Carol's back. After a while, he rushed to the Goo God Peak from another direction. This place was not very far from the Goo God Peak, less than 20 miles away. Ling Shiqi used the Ghost Spring steps and soon arrived near the mountain gate. He used the white eye to avoid Princess Carol and knew that she was quietly hiding in the dark. Ling Shiqi quietly entered the Goo God Peak again, preparing to lure out the experts. But he didn't know that after Princess Carol quietly waited for a while, she sneered and then left at an even faster speed. After Ling Shiqi entered the Goo God Peak, he used the white eye and quickly found a person's aura. That person was Zhao Ying. And this person was the key to Ling Shiqi luring out the experts of the Goo God Peak. At this moment, Zhao Ying had just walked out of a palace. This was the place where the sound transmission formation was set up. He used the sound transmission formation to inform the King's City branch about the strange disciple that he encountered. The higher-ups of the Goo God sect were in the King's City. He believed that there would be a result soon. However, at this moment, an evil ghost figure floated away. Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He was about to chase after it, but he stopped in an instant. He thought to himself, still want to play this trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. However, after hesitating for a moment, he still chased after it. After about half an incense stick's time, a person wearing a chaotic mask appeared. He quickly walked to the hall where the sound transmission formation was placed. However, when he reached the door, a sudden change occurred. A dense group of goo worms suddenly drilled out from the ground. They gathered together to form a human figure. Then, with a flash of light, a person suddenly appeared. It was Zhao Ying who was supposed to leave. As soon as he appeared, he laughed sinisterly. There is a way to heaven but you don't walk. There is no door to hell but you break in. You have already run away, but you still dare to come back and cause trouble. Let me beat you up and see what kind of trash you are." Ling Shiqi immediately put on a shocked posture. Why are you here? You dare to attack me? Do you know who I am? Sneaky. Even if your identity is extraordinary, I am still performing the duties of the sect. I am reasonable no matter what you say. After Zhao Ying finished speaking, he waved his hand. The goo worms flew up and formed a small insect cloud that spread out. Ling Shiqi immediately rose up from under his feet. His figure quickly rushed back. At the same time, he surged out a strange rhythm from his mouth, causing the insect cloud to pause and stay in the air. Do you think I will use this method if I know you can control the goo magic sound? Explode! Zhao Ying shouted explosively, and then the cloud of insects that covered the sky suddenly exploded apart. Rolling colorful lights burst out, accompanied by an earth-shaking loud sound, resounding throughout the entire Goo God Peak. Buzz! Ling Shiqi formed a fist seal with his hands. Golden light flowed around his body and condensed into a huge golden seal in front of him, blocking the power of the explosion for him. This was another level 5 spiritual skill attached to the ultimate gold mystic yang skill, the ultimate gold breaking mountain seal. This was a spiritual skill that had both offensive and defensive capabilities. However, this ultimate gold breaking mountain seal could not completely block the power of the explosion. Ling Shiqi could only retreat and erect an ice wall around his body to be safe. Zhao Ying saw that such a powerful explosion did not injure Ling Shiqi, a spirit pulse realm cultivator, and his face was a little embarrassed. He roared, "You are not using the 10,000 goose spirit devouring technique at all, you are indeed a spy." Ling Shiqi ignored him and turned to run. Zhao Ying shouted fiercely, "Run?" Such a big movement has attracted all the disciples in the Goo God Peak. Let's see if you can still go to heaven or earth. He was right. The moment the insect cloud exploded, all the disciples of the Goo God sect rushed over, including 3 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators and more than 10 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. There were also hundreds of disciples below the 4th level of Sky Human Realm. However, Ling Shiqi was secretly smiling. This was the result he wanted. Zhao Ying's actions had saved him a lot of effort. Chapter 371. Today, the Goo God Peak was unusually lively. From dozens of Sky Realm experts to hundreds of low-level disciples, they were all looking for a single person. In the end, the sky was dark, but they couldn't even find a shadow. At this time, 4 Spirit Aperture Realm experts were gathered together, including Zhao Ying and Qingbai. Zhao Ying's face was extremely ugly. After he fought with Ling Shiqi quickly got rid of him and sank into the ground. He also used the Byakugan and the system map to avoid all the Goo God sect disciples. So, after a long time, no one could find him. At this time, there was a sudden sound at the foot of the mountain. "Found him, found him. He is there," quickly informed the elders. Zhao Ying and the other 3 heard this and rushed over. Not long after, they saw Ling Shiqi being blocked by dozens of Goo God sect disciples. However, there were only a few Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators among these disciples, so they were not in a hurry to make a move. Ling Shiqi saw Zhao Ying and the others rushing over and sneered, "Oh, you guys are quite fast, but do you think you can stop me with just these trash?" Ling Shiqi waved his arm and an endless amount of demonic qi spread out, covering a radius of dozens of feet. Zhao Ying said anxiously, "Not good, he is going to run again." Qingbai, who was standing beside him, flicked out a few goo worms. Those goo worms kept spinning in the air and stirred up a strong wind. The strong wind blew away the demonic qi in an instant, but Ling Shiqi's figure was already gone. "Damn it!" Zhao Ying said angrily. He suddenly squatted down and inserted his arms deep into the ground. Immediately, goo worms poured into the ground. He must be hiding down there. Watch me pull him out. Hundreds of goo worms drilled into the ground. These goo worms seemed to be suitable for living underground, and their speed was very fast. These goo worms kept spreading underground. Zhao Ying closed his eyes and carefully sensed the information sent back by the goo worms. A few dozen breaths later, his eyes widened and a hint of joy appeared on his face. He shouted, "Still want to hide? Come out." Zhao Ying raised his arms, and the ground began to tremble slightly. A huge gully was created on the ground. The ravine continued to extend until it was 300 to 400 feet away. Then, Leng Shiqi's figure was forced out. Leng Shiqi said in a surprised but dismissive tone, "You have some skills, but it's still useless. I'll take my leave." Then, he used the ghostly spring steps with all his might to escape. Leng Shiqi, who had already opened the spirit veins in his legs, was much faster than before. In the blink of an eye, only a blurry figure could be seen. "Chase!" Zhao Ying ordered. He lifted his foot and was about to give chase. However, Cheng Bai, who was beside him, stopped him. He's already used the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain twice. It's hard to say if this isn't the third time. If we all go out, there will only be 5 people guarding the important places of Gushan Peak. The other 2 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators also nodded. However, Zhao Ying was already on top of his head. He said, "What are you afraid of?" His methods are indeed strange, but his cultivation is only at the Spirit Aperture Realm. As long as we restrict him, I can kill him in one move. This person stole the goo worm and wanted to destroy the sound transmission array. He must have been sent by the main combat sect. If we kill him, it will be a great merit. Even if there's an accident, I, Zhao Ying, will take responsibility. Cheng Bai and the other 2 looked at each other. Since someone had taken the initiative to take responsibility, they had nothing to say. Just as Zhao Ying said, killing Leng Shiqi could be considered a great merit. They immediately agreed and chased after him with Zhao Ying. Leng Shiqi's speed was indeed fast, even faster than the 4 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators. However, his goal was not to escape now, but to lure them out. Therefore, Leng Shiqi deliberately slowed down a little, maintaining the same speed as Zhao Ying and the others. Gradually, Leng Shiqi led dozens of Gushan sect masters across the mountain gate of Gushan Peak. However, he was surprised to find that he did not see Princess Carol in the field of vision of his Byakugan. It was reasonable to say that she should be lurking near Gushan Peak, ready to go up the mountain at any time. Leng Shiqi secretly guessed that maybe Princess Carol was waiting for an opportunity on the other side of Gushan Peak. He did not care too much and continued to run forward with dozens of people behind him. About an hour later, Leng Shiqi and others had already left Gushan Peak for some distance. He was about to get rid of Zhao Ying and the others completely and then go to the pool mentioned by Princess Carol, but an accident happened. A few miles away, dozens of Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators suddenly appeared. What shocked him the most was that there were oneness of heaven and man and several Spirit Astral Realm cultivators among them. As for the rest, they were all in Spirit Aperture Realm and Spirit Pulse Realm. And the leader of oneness of heaven and man was Prince Heli. Seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he soon realized that he had been fooled by Princess Carol. Princess Carol did not come to Gushan Peak to get anything at all. Her purpose was to draw out the masters of Gushan Peak. But she met Leng Shiqi on the way, so she left the dangerous task to him. Leng Shiqi also secretly hated himself for having a preconceived idea. He subconsciously thought that Princess Carol came to Gushan Peak to get something or meet someone, so he did not think too much about it. He secretly smiled bitterly. He did not expect that the sheep he had been collecting wool from had schemed against him. Leng Shiqi could only blame himself for being a little careless and falling into this trap because he was too greedy for the mind-controlling insect. But fortunately, his life was not in danger, and he could take this opportunity to see what the jingoists were up to. Leng Shiqi deliberately slowed down at this time, pretending that his spiritual power was exhausted. Seeing this, Zhao Ying immediately showed a crazy smile. When they were about to approach Leng Shiqi's figure directly disappeared into the ground. Zhao Ying sneered, still using such a low-level method. Just as he was about to pull out Leng Shiqi, a huge aura like flowing fire rushed over. Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He looked over and saw dozens of people in black rushing over quickly. The person in the lead was in oneness of heaven and man. Before that person even got close, Zhao Ying and the others dared to feel that blazing killing intent. Those people were coming for them. Zhao Ying and the other 3 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators immediately leaned together. They all looked dignified. The other party obviously came with ill intentions, but they foolishly ran out of Gushan Peak and lost the protection of the sect protecting array. This was not luring the tiger away from the mountain, it was clearly luring the snake out of its hole. Chapter 372. Soon, under the night sky, the 2 groups of people confronted each other. The number of people in the 2 groups was about the same, and they were all spirit cultivators in the celestial realm. However, the gap between them was huge. There were only 4 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators in the Gu God sect, and the rest were in the Spirit Pulse realm. However, the other side had masters in the Unity of Heaven and Man realm and Gang Spirit realm. Just these few people could easily kill dozens of people in the Gu God sect. Zhao Ying and the other 3 people's expressions had already sunk to the bottom. They all knew that they had been fooled. The purpose of the other side was to lure them out of the Gu God Peak and then destroy them in one fell swoop. As long as these spirit cultivators in the celestial realm were killed, the low-level disciples in the Gu God Peak would be a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Zhao Ying's face was not only gloomy, but also hot. If he had not been so impulsive, they would not have come out in full force. At this moment, he really hated Lang Shiqi and himself. Zhao Ying whispered, "I will stop them. You guys go back to the Gu God Peak and open the sect protection array." Since he had made such a serious mistake, he would take the corresponding responsibility. Although his voice was low, it was still heard by Prince Heli. However, he was masked at this time, so the people in the Gu God sect did not know his identity. Prince Heli suppressed his voice and said, "Ridiculous, you want to stop me? Die." He punched out, and the violent fist force attracted a trace of the power of heaven and earth. It turned into a flame python that lit up the night sky and swept over with killing intent. "Go!" Zhao Ying shouted, and countless goo worms suddenly drilled out of his body. Those goo worms did not fly out, but gnawed at his own flesh and blood. And his aura was constantly rising. He was sacrificing his own flesh and blood in exchange for great power. Prince Heli said disdainfully, "Insignificant skill." Unfortunately, no matter how strong Zhao Ying's aura was, he was still in the Spirit Aperture realm. Facing the flame python, he did not even have a chance to attack before he was ruthlessly swallowed up. In an instant, he died without a complete corpse. The unity of heaven and man realm was so powerful. Qingbai's group and the remaining Spirit Pulse stage disciples all had ashen faces. It was as if they could already see their miserable deaths. However, they would definitely not sit still and wait for death. Everyone burst forth with the fastest speed in their lives, wanting to escape from this place. At this moment, after Lang Shiqi sank into the ground, he continued to dive. He knew that there would definitely be a fight above. The fight between the masters of the unity of heaven and man realm would definitely be earth-shattering. He was afraid that he would be affected. At the same time, he kept his supercilious eye open to observe the situation above him. When he saw Zhao Ying being killed in one move, his heart suddenly quivered. At this point, he guessed that the Princess Consort's faction had already secretly joined forces with the pro-war faction. Perhaps when Wang Fei roped in the Dark Thunder Guards, they were already mixed together. Now that he thought about it, the scene of the 3 parties gathering at the courier station that day, those people were all best actors. This was especially true for Prince Heli. Although he looked like a rough and burly man, he was extremely meticulous on the inside. He was also very good at acting, which was really admirable. When Prince Heli saw that Qingbai and the others were about to escape, he laughed maniacally. "Today, none of you will be leaving." He threw out a few punches, instantly breaking mountains and rivers. Blazing fists soared into the sky. Several flame pythons intertwined under the night sky, as if they were going to tear apart the night sky. Facing Prince Heli, Qingbai and the others had no resistance at all. Just as they were about to be swallowed by the flame pythons, a strange goo worm the size of a head suddenly appeared between the two. The goo worm was as weak as an ant in front of the flame pythons, but it was this small goo worm that took the initiative to fly into the flame pythons. Even more amazing was that this goo worm was like a black hole. Before it even touched the flame pythons, it was torn apart and finally completely swallowed. An insignificant goo worm actually swallowed Prince Heli's full force attack. Cheng Bai and the others were first stunned, but when they recognized the goo worm, they all turned to joy. Prince Heli's expression became serious. This is the spirit-devouring goo. No, it's the spirit-devouring goo king. That's right, it's the spirit-devouring goo king. A cold voice came from the sky. Then, the whole sky suddenly buzzed loudly. Layers of goo worms formed a bug cloud that covered the sky in the blink of an eye. Among them, dozens of figures descended from the sky. The leader was the leader of the Goo God sect, Sang He Tong. These people were the top experts of the Goo God sect who had sneaked into the king's city from the beginning. Looking carefully, other than Sang He Tong, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm, the great elder of the Goo God sect was also there. His cultivation was also at the unity of heaven and man realm. In addition, there were several spirit astral realm cultivators, a dozen spirit aperture realm cultivators, and the rest were spirit pulse realm cultivators. In addition to Cheng Bai and the others, there were more than 100 experts in the Goo God sect. Just in terms of fighting strength, the Goo God sect had almost twice as many people as Prince Heli. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding below, was shocked when he saw this scene. Looking at the current situation, the leader of the Goo God sect, Sang He Tong, clearly knew about Prince Heli's plan to lure the snake out of its hole. Sang He Tong was a young man with a white face and no beard. He looked harmless. At this moment, he had a cold smile on his face. Prince Heli, as a prince, you don't dare to show your true face. You are a disgrace to your status as a prince. Prince Heli didn't say anything. He took off the black mask on his head and showed his true face. At the moment Sang and Tong appeared here, he knew that they'd actually been tricked. Prince Heli had joined hands with the princess consort and the Dark Thunder Guards to put on a show. They wanted to eliminate the low-level disciples of the Goo God sect and destroy the Goo God Peak so that Sang and Tong would lose their support. Therefore, they had a plan to lure the snake out of its hole. Unfortunately, they were checkmated by Sang He Tong. Sang He Tong laughed loudly. "Ahaha, Heli, you guys tried so hard to cut off my escape route, but you didn't know that I was also luring the snake out of its hole. I purposely moved more than 80% of the experts into the king's city. You thought that you were aware of it, but in fact, I purposely let you know. Otherwise, how could you leave the city so easily? As long as we kill you, the prince, and the experts, what ability does your main fighting faction have to fight for the throne with us?" Prince Heli and the spirit cultivators behind him felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts. Just as Sang He Tong said, they were going to die here tonight. However, Prince Heli naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. He bellowed, "Sang He Tong, even if you are stronger, do you think it will be so easy to kill me? Even if I die, I will drag you down with me." Sang He Tong tilted his head and laughed. "Then let's try." With that, he moved his hands and a spider web that was dozens of meters long appeared in the air. Each spider web was covered with layers of goo worms. Chapter 373. Sang and Tong's attack was like a signal for all the experts of the Goo God sect to rush over. Prince Heli roared. With a whoosh, his entire body ignited in flames. He bathed in the flames like a god of war. He stomped on the ground and shot out like a cannonball. Sang and Tong moved his finger, and the dark spider web in the sky trembled. Then, thousands of green lights shot out from it, crisscrossing as they rained down. Prince Heli was like a small boat in a raging sea that could capsize at any time. However, he charged at Sang and Tong like a shooting star, ignoring the sharp green lights. At this moment, the Goo God sect's Grand Elder Yale, who was standing near Sang and Tong, also made his move. With a point of his finger, demonic energy and green light surged. Instantly, the demonic light illuminated the world and formed a terrifying parasite that was dozens of feet tall. It opened its bloody mouth and was about to swallow Prince Heli. Scram! Prince Heli roared and smashed his fists. Heaven and earth seemed to tremble slightly. His fists were like dragons, and a fiery sun dragon soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it shattered Yale's goo shadows. There was a difference between unity of heaven and man. It was obvious that Yale was weaker than Prince Heli. However, Yale's goal wasn't to injure Prince Heli. It was enough for him to stop Prince Heli, even if it was only for a moment. At the same time, Sang and Tong formed a seal with both hands. The dozens of giant webs in the sky suddenly shrank. At the same time, a formless sticky force appeared around them. Prince Heli immediately felt his movements become sluggish. Moreover, as the spider web became smaller and smaller, the stickiness also became stronger and stronger. Not good. Prince Heli knew he was best at close combat for a short period of time. If he was restrained, it was only a matter of time before he was ground to death by Sang, Tong, and Yeer. However, he was already deep in the spider web. It was too late for him to retreat now. What should he do? Drip. Suddenly, a drop of water seemed to fall from the sky. However, no one noticed it in the midst of the intense battle. Drip, drip. However, the sound of dripping water kept coming. In just a few breaths of time, it began to rain. Sang, Tong, Yale, and Prince Heli all raised their heads to look. They all sensed that the rainwater wasn't rainwater, but some kind of spirit technique condensed from spirit energy. However, the three of them had different expressions. Sang, Tong, and Yi had grave expressions on their faces, while Prince Heli's face was filled with joy. They knew that there was only one person in the Zhu Road who could use such a spell, and that was Prince Gus. Then, the rain suddenly became heavier and turned into a torrential downpour. The most terrifying thing was that the raindrops had all turned into deadly weapons. Every raindrop was like a small knife that could cut through everything. Strangely, a layer of blue light flashed across the bodies of Prince Heli and his masked men, and the knife-like raindrops passed through them. But the Goo God Sex people didn't have it easy. First of all, Sang and Tong's giant net was destroyed in an instant. Yell kept chanting incantations, and groups of goo bugs flew out around him, protecting everyone in the center. But at every moment, large numbers of goo worms fell to the ground, and soon, the ground was covered in a layer of goo worm corpses. Sang Yitong's eyes flashed with green light. He looked around and suddenly, his gaze locked onto a certain spot in the air. Humph, come out. A pair of wings that were over 6 meters long spread out from his back, and upon closer inspection, these wings were completely made of goo worms. It was the soaring sky goo that Ling Shiqi had obtained not long ago. However, Sang Yitong's soaring sky goo far surpassed Ling Shiqi in both quantity and quality. Sang Yitong flew to the sky and waved his hands. 2 green lightning bolts that were as thick as buckets streaked across the night sky. Strangely, the green lightning bolt struck at a lump of air. However, an aqua-blue hand appeared in the void and crushed the 2 green lightning bolts. At the same time, a figure appeared there. It was Prince Gus. The moment Prince Gus appeared, the situation changed. Although they only had one more person, Sang Yitong knew that since Prince Gus appeared, he would not be able to kill Prince Heli. Sang Yitong and Prince Heli were both at Heaven Man Unity late stage, while Prince Gus and Yell were at Heaven Man Unity middle stage. Prince Gus might be weaker than Sang Yitong, but he was a spirit mage. A Heaven Man Unity stage spirit mage alone was comparable to an army of thousands. Sang Yitong said darkly, Prince Gus has also become a coward, but I wonder if your highness has just arrived, or have you been here all along? His words didn't sound good to Prince Heli's ears. If Prince Gus had just arrived because he sensed danger, then so be it, but if he had arrived long ago, then this was something worth thinking about. Prince Gus first glanced at Prince Heli before saying to Sang Yitong, I have indeed arrived long ago. The reason why I did not make a move was to keep you here. Just as he finished speaking, with him as the center, water curtains rose into the sky in a radius of several hundred meters. In an instant, water vapor covered the sky and formed a water prison, trapping everyone inside. Prince Gus said in a deep voice, "Sang He Tong, you are underestimating me too much. You brought so many experts of the Goo God sect into King's City. This action is too careless and eye-catching, as if you are purposely telling us that you have no one behind you. You want to beat us at our own game to lure out some of our experts and eliminate them, but you don't know that I am also going to beat you at your own game and lure you, the sect master, out. Ha 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 ha." Hearing this, Sang He Tong laughed wildly. "You make it sound good, but so what? Do you think you can change the situation just because you are here? My Goo God sect's experts are still several times more than yours. As long as we delay you and Prince Heli, your experts will be killed by us sooner or later." Prince Gus shook his head lightly. "You think you are smart, but since I want to beat you at your own game, why would I come alone? Consort, please show yourself." The air beside Prince Gus suddenly twisted, and a dozen figures walked out. The one standing at the front was the elegant best consort. Prince Gus came with the Imperial Guards. He knew that the Goo God sect was trying to lure Prince Heli out, so he deliberately beat them at their own game. The sect master sneered. Both sides were evenly matched. Consort came with the elite troops. The Dark Thunder Guards appeared and stood on the side of the Goo God sect, but the Dark Thunder Guards attacked the Goo God sect. Their strength was overwhelming. The Goo God sect fled, and Lang Shichi quietly appeared and communicated with Yu Ruifeng. Chapter 374. The Queen's faction was the weakest among the three factions fighting for the throne. The two princes of the pro-war faction were masters of oneness of heaven and man. They had military power and were the strongest. The Goo God sect of the peace faction was not as strong as the pro-war faction in terms of overall strength. However, the Goo God sect was also the national religion of Zhu Lu country. Many ordinary people in Zhu Lu country believed in the Goo God sect. The other leader of the peace faction, Chu Li, was not strong, but he was an elder of Zhu Lu country. Half of the important ministers in the court were his disciples. Therefore, the peace faction had the support of the ministers and the people. However, the Queen's faction had neither military power nor the support of important ministers. Only a few relatives stood behind the Queen. They could not compare with the pro-war faction and the peace faction. However, the princess consort had something that everyone yearned for even in their dreams, the Wang Ling. The king died unexpectedly. The new king had not appeared, so the king's token was in the queen's hands. With the king's token, she called in the lords of the 4 citadels and their subordinates. There were 17 people in total. Among these people, the 4 city lords were all in the gang spirit realm, and the others were in the spiritual aperture realm, which was a very powerful force. With the appearance of such a force, the advantage of the Goo God sect was almost gone. Sang He Tong looked gloomy when he saw the Queen's people appear out of nowhere. The two sides were almost equal in strength. His plan to kill Prince Heli had completely failed. He said sternly, "Queen Bess, do you know how stupid your choice is? Do you really think Gus and Heli will let you go?" Queen Bess said coldly, "Sang He Tong, you secretly cast goo on me and His Majesty. You are the murderer who murdered His Majesty. Tonight's matter has nothing to do with the fight for the throne. We want to kill you, the evil thief who killed the king and usurped the throne." Sang and Tong let out a soft cry of surprise. "You found out so quickly?" "Oh, yes, with the Dark Thunder Guards, it is possible. You are indeed the Dark Thunder Guards. However, you want to kill me? Wishful thinking. You will be the ones to die. Everyone, come out." Right at this moment, the auras of a few spirit pulse stage cultivators who were originally among the Goo God sect's disciples suddenly surged. 6 of them were in the spirit aperture realm, 1 was in the gang's spirit realm, and 1 was in the unity of heaven and men realm. This person was none other than Yu Ruifeng. These people were actually from the Dark Thunder Guards. The other person in Gang's spirit realm was naturally Yuan Song. In fact, Yuan Song and several Dark Thunder Guards in spiritual aperture realm couldn't control the situation here. However, Yu Ruifeng, this Heaven Man Unity Realm great expert, was completely different. His appearance alone was enough to reverse the entire battle situation. Now that the Gu God sect had 3 realm of unity of heaven and man, they only needed 2 of them to hold back Prince Gus and Prince Heli, and the remaining one would be able to slaughter the Jingoists. Seeing this, whether it was Prince Gus, Prince Heli, or Princess Consort, they were all shocked. The Dark Thunder Guards actually stood on the side of the Gu God sect. When Sang Yitong saw these people's expressions as if they had eaten a fly, he immediately laughed wantonly. Ha ha ha. How ridiculous. Why do you think the Dark Thunder Guards could find out the cause of the king's death in one day? Of course, I deliberately leaked it out. At this point, Bess and the others' expressions turned even uglier. Princess Bess, it's really beyond my expectation that you can bring several city lords here, but in front of absolute strength, this little plot is nothing. Princess Bess looked deeply at Yu Ruifeng. She gritted her teeth and said, Lord Yu, is your Dark Thunder Guards really going to openly intervene in the internal affairs of Zhulu country? Yu Ruifeng said expressionlessly, Princess, you're wrong. The Dark Thunder Guards were personally invited into the palace by you. From that moment on, the Dark Thunder Guards couldn't get away. Good for you, Yu Ruifeng. At this time, Prince Heli shouted angrily, it turns out that when you were in the post house, you promised Princess Bess on the surface, but in fact, you had secretly colluded with the Gu God sect. Sang Yitong interrupted, colluded? Didn't the 2 princes also collude with the princess? They even put on a show together at the post house. It's really disgusting. Enough, I don't want to waste words with you. Lord Yu, Yi, and I will delay the 2 princes. You go all out and kill the rest. Yu Ruifeng didn't answer and only nodded. At this time, Prince Gus took a step forward. His body was filled with boundless spirit and mental strength. He said, Sang Yitong, you have to think clearly. Even if you have the advantage in strength, if you want to kill us, be careful not to give up your life here. Prince Gus's words were very intimidating. He was a spirit caster at unity with the world realm. If he really fought with his life on the line, it was possible that he could take everyone down with him. Sang Yitong's eyes flashed with cold light. He seemed to have a trace of hesitation. Great Elder Yi, of the Gu God sect hurriedly shouted, Sect leader. You can't hesitate anymore. They're stalling for time. Don't forget, they still have the Imperial Guards. Sang Yitong was shocked. That's right, since the 2 princes were here, the Imperial Guards had no reason not to come. It was just that everyone here was an expert. They were very fast, so they came early. Behind them, there were thousands of Imperial Guards rushing here. The Imperial Guards were not ordinary soldiers. The weakest in the Imperial Guards were Spirit Transformation Realm cultivators. There were also experts at the Sky Realm. They could be said to be the strongest fighting force in Zhulu country. This was also the reason why Sang Yitong wanted to lure the 2 princes out. No matter how strong he was, he would be killed by the Imperial Guards. There's no time to lose. Quickly, make your move. Sang Yitong ordered and took the lead. A pair of wings made of goo worms appeared behind him and he flew into the sky. He crossed his hands and shook them. Countless green threads appeared behind him and weaved into a spider web. Dozens of huge goo worms appeared beside Yi. Every goo worm's aura was comparable to the spirit aperture realm. These goo worms bared their fangs and charged towards the pro-war faction's crowd, causing them to be in a state of confusion. Prince Heli shouted. His fist broke through the void and charged towards Yi, with a wave of fire. Prince Gus quickly formed a series of hand seals while chanting an incantation. Suddenly, a blue magic formation with a radius of 300 meters appeared in the night sky, facing off against Sang and Tong's spiderweb. Sang Yitong smiled, Lord Yu, it's up to you. A broadsword appeared in Yu Ruifeng's hand. He held the broadsword horizontally and a shocking sword intent was emitted from his body. It was as if the entire world was enveloped by sword intent. Yu Ruifeng's sword turned and a grey sword light that was dozens of meters long slashed towards Yi. Chapter 375. Yale had released a dozen goo worms that were comparable to rank 4 fiend beasts, so he had to divert part of his attention to control them. Since Prince Heli was coming for him, he focused all of his attention on Prince Heli. How could he have expected Yu Ruifeng, who was on their side, to suddenly attack him? Yu Ruifeng's terrifying sword slashed with destructive killing intent. Yale's reaction was slow, and he only had time to summon a few goo worms to block the attack. However, Yu Ruifeng's sword slashed through all of the goo worms in an instant. Yale formed a seal with his hands, and a dense blood energy burst out, condensing into a goo worm that looked like blood jade behind him. The goo worm took the initiative to meet Yu Ruifeng's sword slash. With a loud clang, a deep sword mark appeared on the goo worm's body, and it opened its mouth to let out a soundless wail. However, it was fortunate that he managed to block this sudden sword strike. Yu Ruifeng's move caused everyone's expression to change. Bess, Prince Gus, and Prince Heli's gloomy faces were replaced with smiles of success. In contrast, Sang and Tong's smug expression instantly darkened. Only one person knew Yu Ruifeng would attack the Goo God's sect, and that was Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi, who had been hiding in the depths of the earth, saw everything with his eyes open. He had to admit, this was a good show. Princess Carol had used him to lure out the experts from the Goo God Peak. Prince Heli wanted to eliminate them and destroy the Goo God Peak, cutting off Sang and Tong's escape route. However, Sang and Tong had already known all of this and lured Prince Heli out, wanting to eliminate them quickly. However, Prince Gus was also hiding in the dark. Not only that, but he had also roped in Bess. In truth, Leng Shiqi could see that Prince Gus didn't want to come out so early. He was probably still waiting for the Imperial Guards to arrive. Unfortunately, he didn't expect Sang and Tong to come so quickly. The most important thing was the Dark Lightning Guards. When Yu Ruifeng and the others appeared beside Sang He, Leng Shiqi guessed that Yu Ruifeng would betray them. Yu Ruifeng hated the peacemaking sect and the Goo God sect to the core, so how could he stand on the side of the Goo God sect? Although Leng Shiqi had guessed this result, he still couldn't help but praise Yu Ruifeng. Yu Ruifeng was indeed a veteran Dark Thunder Guard inspector. He was able to put himself in the most crucial position in a situation where 3 forces were divided. It could be said that he held great initiative. Even if Yu Ruifeng wanted to help anyone, it would only take a single thought from him. Leng Shiqi could only describe Yu Ruifeng as an old silver coin. At the same time, he was also very curious as to how many complicated things had happened in the day he left Royal City to cause such a scene. In the battle, Yu Ruifeng's sudden betrayal once again turned the tide of the battle. Although Yale barely managed to block Yu Ruifeng's strike, Prince Heli was already on the attack. Prince Heli had already turned into a fire dragon. He roared angrily, and an earth-shattering dragon roar resounded through the sky. Even the water prison set by Prince Gus trembled. Yale exclaimed, "Red Sky Dragon Transformation Technique." Puff! Yale spat out a mouthful of hot blood at the critical moment. Before the blood fell to the ground, several monsters that looked like humans and insects appeared in front of him. These monsters opened their mouths and swallowed Yale's blood. Suddenly, the blood on their bodies surged, and each monster's chi was comparable to a spirit cultivator of the spirit astral realm. Yale controlled these monsters to charge at the fire dragon. He also knew that it was impossible to stop Prince Heli with this method, so his goal was to escape. Then, a human figure formed by goo worms separated from Yale's body and drilled into the ground, running towards the edge of the water prison. Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed coldly. He swung his sword, and the blade split the sky. His sword style was very simple. It was just a casual swing of the sword, but it felt like it was going to split the space. The monsters released by Yale were instantly crushed into a pile of mud under the pincer attack of Prince Heli and Uruefeng, and completely swallowed Yale. However, after the sword light and fire dragon dissipated, Yale's figure was nowhere to be seen. Prince Heli was startled. Not good, he escaped. At the same time, a series of loud noises resounded from the sky. They raised their heads and saw that Sang and Tong were already fighting with Prince Gus. The green net behind Sang and Tong was shooting out countless rays of light, covering the sky and earth. Prince Gus's huge blue formation also spewed out streams of water. The streams of water looked soft and powerless, but they were comparable to the green light. Sang and Tong's face was like an iron pot. His cultivation was higher than Prince Gus's, but he couldn't gain the upper hand at all in this fight. To deal with a spirit caster, large-scale attacks like this were disadvantageous to begin with, because that was what spirit casters were best at. In fact, Sang and Tong's initial opponent wasn't Prince Gus's, but Uruefeng's sudden betrayal left him with no choice. Especially when Sang and Tong looked down and saw that Yale had already been beaten back by Prince Heli and Uruefeng. His heart sank to the bottom of the valley. If 3 Unity of Heaven realm experts attacked him together, even if he used all his trump cards, it was very likely that he would die here. Retreat. Retreat to Goo God Peak. Sang and Tong knew that he had lost tonight's battle. The key to his defeat was Uruefeng's betrayal. Thus, Sang and Tong said fiercely, "Very good, Lord, you really is a good schemer. We'll settle this score later." Prince Gus said, "Sang and Tong, do you still think you can escape?" Sang and Tong looked at the water prison around them. His face flashed with ruthlessness. Goo God sect disciples formed the myriad goo devouring formation. Yes. All the members of the Goo God sect answered at the same time. Then, they released all their goo worms. In an instant, goo worms filled the sky, almost filling up the entire water prison. With Sang and Tong as the center, the goo worms kept circling around, gradually forming the pattern of a formation. Prince Gus immediately shouted, "Stop them." Too late. Sang and Tong laughed nastily. Myriad goo devouring formation, break. Countless goo worms arranged themselves in a strange rhythm. Soon after, waves of green light filled everyone's vision. Puffing noises could be heard as the water prison set up by Prince Gus was completely devoured by the goo worms. Chapter 376. The disciples of the Goo God sect broke the water prison with the goo swallowing array and left all the goo worms here to stop the main war faction. Under the leadership of Sang, Tong, and Yi, those disciples quickly fled back to the Goo God Peak. Prince Heli roared, "We can't let them go back to the Goo God Peak." There was a protective array in the Goo God Peak. As long as Sang and Tong entered the Goo God Peak and opened the protective array, they would be invincible. The trap set by the main war faction would be in vain. Gus, Heli, and Uruefeng all made a big move, tearing a big hole in countless goo worms, and rushed out, chasing after the disciples of the Goo God sect. Several masters of the Gang Spirit realm followed closely. As for the rest of the people of the Spirit Aperture realm and the Spirit Pulse realm, they were temporarily trapped here. Fortunately, the people in front of them had cleared most of the goo worms, and these goo worms were not much of a threat without the control of the spirit cultivators, so they were not in danger. Just as these dozens of people were clearing out the goo worms, a figure sneaked in unknowingly. He came to the surroundings of the Dark Thunder Guards and found one of them. Old Guan. Guan Feihong was shocked when he heard this. He turned around and saw Lang Shiqi coming to his side. "My lord, why are you here?" "It's a long story. By the way, tell me what happened in the past day?" Lang Shiqi asked. Guan Feihong killed the goo worms around him and said, "My lord, in fact, I don't know much. I only know that after Lord Yu entered the palace, he quickly found out that the king's death was related to the goo poison. It was a rather peculiar goo poison. They were planted on the king and the queen respectively. Usually, if they were separated, the goo poison was not a poison, but beneficial to the human body. But once the king and the princess were together, the combination of the two became a magical slow-acting goo poison. The king has been eroded by this slow-acting goo poison for a long time and may die at any time. Leng Shiqi waved his black jade sword and cut down the goo worms one after another. He understood. According to Sang Hetong, the reason why the Dark Lightning Guards were able to find out so quickly was because Sang Hetong had secretly told Yu Ruifeng about it. He wanted Yu Ruifeng to put the blame on Princess Consort. Not only that, since the king had been poisoned, then the Princess Consort must be the same, just slightly less so than the king. When Princess Carol learned of this, she was so anxious that she wanted to sneak into the Goo God Peak to steal the antidote. And she became a chess piece in the hands of Wang Fei and the pro-war faction. They simply let her use the excuse of stealing the antidote to lure out the master of Gushan Peak. Once the Goo God Peak did not have a spirit cultivator of the four realms of heaven, they would not have the capital to activate the sect-protecting Great Array. And so, everything that happened tonight was the result of that. The only difference was that Princess Carol met Leng Shiqi on the way. She used the mind control voodoo as a lure and let Leng Shiqi take her place to lure out the experts of the Goo God Peak. However, Leng Shiqi still had a doubt. That was, how did Wang Fei and the pro-war faction know that Sang Hetong would suddenly come here from King City? Leng Shiqi, who was hiding underground, had his supercilious eyes open. He saw very clearly that Sang Hetong's group had directly teleported here through some kind of teleportation array. If Bess Wang Fei and the two princes had expected Sang Hetong to come, then it would be fine. However, logically speaking, they should be blocking Sang and Tong's path from the rear, and not hiding from the start. They clearly knew that Sang Hetong would come through the teleportation array. However, this could be said to be Sang Hetong's most important trump card. It was also his most important method to get rid of Prince Heli. How could he easily leak it? At this time, another Dark Lightning Guard also noticed Leng Shiqi. He said, "Hey, Lord Lu, you're here too." This time, we were able to deal a heavy blow to the Goo God sect thanks to Brother Guan. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's heart couldn't help but tighten. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Leng Shiqi didn't ask Guan Feihong this time. Instead, he asked the other Dark Lightning Guard, "What did Guan Feihong do?" That person paused for a moment, then said, "It was Brother Guan who received news from Sang Hetong that they have a teleportation array that can instantly cross dozens of miles. That's why we set up this trap." "Old Guan, did you really do this?" Leng Shiqi hurriedly asked Guan Feihong. Guan Feihong nodded. "Yes." "Then how did you learn of this?" "I was poisoned with mind-controlling voodoo." "Lord, you told me not to show it." Later, Sang Hetong passed this information to me through mind-controlling voodoo. He told me to secretly add fuel to the fire and force the pro-war faction to leave the city. This subordinate felt that this matter was of great importance. Lord wasn't in the city at the time, so this subordinate reported it to Lord Yu. Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong. Although he had helped Guan Feihong break free from mind-controlling voodoo twice, he didn't have the ability to remove it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked Tu Deng for the method to remove it. But from Guan Feihong's words, it seemed that he had already removed the mind-controlling voodoo. Leng Shiqi thought, that's not right. If he wasn't controlled by mind-controlling voodoo, how did Sang Hetong give him the order? Moreover, Guan Feihong is only a Dark Lightning envoy. His words carry little weight. How can he influence the pro-war faction's decision? Why would Sang Hetong give him such an order? Unless... Suddenly, Leng Shiqi shivered. He looked straight at Guan Feihong and asked word by word, "Did you remove the mind-controlling voodoo?" Guan Feihong showed a strange expression. "Lord, why do you ask this? Didn't you just help this subordinate remove the mind-controlling voodoo?" When he said this, Leng Shiqi's heart sank. At the same time, he felt a chill run down his spine. There was only one thought in his mind right now, and that was, everyone has underestimated Sang and Tong. Where did he get the ability to remove the mind-controlling voodoo a day ago? However, Guan Feihong spoke with certainty. This was clearly an order that Sang Hetong secretly gave Guan Feihong. That was to make Guan Feihong believe that he had removed the mind-controlling voodoo. Ling Shiqi's mind was spinning. I'm afraid that when I temporarily freed Guan Feihong from the mind-controlling voodoo in front of everyone, Sang Hetong discovered it. However, I don't know if there was a traitor or if Sang Hetong sensed the abnormality of the mind-controlling voodoo. Therefore, Sang Hetong used Guan Feihong to deliberately let them know that they could teleport here. I didn't think that mind-controlling voodoo could be used like this. But, what was Sang Hetong's goal in doing this? Could it be that he deliberately set up a trap to send himself to his death? Ling Shiqi was puzzled. Chapter 377. Ling Shiqi knew he couldn't let his imagination run wild. He had to get rid of Guan Feihong's mind control goo first. He said to Guan Feihong, "Old Guan, don't move. I'll take out the mind control goo for you." Guan Feihong was confused at first, but when he saw Ling Shiqi's serious expression, he was shocked. "My lord, could it be that I?" Ling Shiqi gestured for him to keep quiet. Then, he made a small cut on Guan Feihong's chest and muttered something. Then a small thing slowly came out of Guan Feihong's heart. Guan Feihong's face was filled with pain, but he didn't make a sound. About 10 breaths later, the little bug was finally lured out by Ling Shiqi. After it came out, it fell to the ground and stopped breathing. Once the mind control goo leaves the body, it will die instantly. Seeing the mind control goo die, Ling Shiqi finally let out a sigh of relief. Guan Feihong was shocked. He had already guessed that he was being used. Guan Feihong ignored the wounds on his body and whispered, "My lord, Sang Hetong is scheming." "What is he trying to do?" Ling Shiqi shook his head. He couldn't think of any reason. All of this seemed like Sang Hetong wanted to commit suicide. It was unbelievable. Even Ling Shiqi started to doubt his own judgment. At this moment, orderly footsteps could be heard from afar. The goo worms here were almost all cleared out. Everyone turned their heads and saw groups of imperial guards entering their sight. At a rough glance, there were thousands of people. Ling Shiqi was speechless. He was afraid that 90% of the imperial guards had been mobilized. If that was the case, wouldn't Monarch City be empty? He frowned. Is Sang Hetong's target Imperial City? Several people walked out of the crowd and shouted, "The two princes have already gone to kill Sang Hetong. We will immediately go to Gushan Peak. Today, we will remove the Gushan sect from Zhulu." Then, the dozens of people present led thousands of imperial guards to the Gu God Peak. Ling Shiqi pondered for a moment and followed. This place was not far from the Gu God Peak, only about a dozen miles away. Along the way, they saw some scattered corpses of the Gu God sect disciples. But when they were about to reach the Gu God Peak, the entire Gu God Peak burst out with a green light that illuminated the entire night sky. Then, the green light began to shrink again until it reached the middle of the mountain. The Gu God sect's sect protecting array was activated. In the end, Sang and Tong fled back to Gushan Peak. Ling Shiqi thought, this is going to be tricky. Not only did Sang and Tong activate the sect protecting grand formation, they even gave up the lower half of the Gu God Peak. They are going to defend it to the death. Let's see if Prince Gus has any tricks up his sleeve. Ling Shiqi and the others walked all the way to the mountainside. During this time, they did not see a single disciple of the Gu God sect. It seemed that all the disciples of the Gu God sect had retreated to the top. Prince Gus and the others who had arrived at the beginning were standing in front of the sect protecting grand formation, discussing something. I didn't expect Sang and Tong to be so difficult to deal with. Your Highness, do you have any understanding of this formation? Yu Ruifeng asked. Prince Gus said, this formation was created by the previous Gu God sect leader, Tu Deng. In the history of the Gu God sect, it has only been activated once. That was a few decades ago. It is said that at that time, several spirit cultivator sects joined forces to destroy the Goo God sect. In the end, they all died on the Goo God peak. It was also because of that battle that the Goo God sect established their position. Prince Heli continued, but some time ago, we captured an old disciple of the Goo God sect and got some information about this formation from him. This formation is called the Goo Poison Calamity Formation. The area covered by the formation is filled with goo poison. Not only that, the formation will block all perception, making it easy to get lost. Once the people of the Goo God sect sneak attack, the consequences would be unimaginable. It can be said that this is a trap and kill formation. Yu Ruifeng saw that their words were clear and logical, and knew that they must have a way to break the formation. Thus, he asked, Your Highness, do you have a way to break the formation? Hee. Prince Heli laughed strangely. The Goo God sect has always been famous for using goo. But you don't know that us two brothers have studied goo worms. Lord Yu, please take a look. Prince Heli raised his hand and released a thumb-sized black goo worm. This goo worm is specially cultivated by us. It can block the goo poison. As long as each of us has one, we won't be afraid of the goo poison in the formation. Prince Gus took out a bracelet and said, The people who wear this will sense each other's location. With this, we won't have to worry about getting lost. Yi has already been heavily injured by us. We don't have to fear him. Let's force our way in and kill Sang and Tong. Everything will be settled. So the two of them were already prepared. Yu Ruifeng laughed heartily and cupped his hands. Your Highness, you are really well prepared. As the saying goes, know thyself and know thy enemy, and you will never be defeated. This one admires you. Prince Heli turned around and saw that Ling Shiqi and the thousands of guards had arrived. He and Prince Gus distributed the goo worms and bracelets to everyone. After knowing that these two items were used, Ling Shiqi was secretly shocked. To be able to cultivate these strange goo worms and make thousands of bracelets that could sense each other, it took a lot of resources. Obviously, these two had been planning to get rid of the Goo God sect for a long time. After everyone received the items, they broke into the Goo God sect protection formation. Ling Shiqi stayed for a few breaths of time. Then he took out a fingernail-sized jade bead and crushed it. Then he followed everyone into the sect protection formation. On the other side of the Goo God peak, Tu Deng, who was immersed in the scripture world, suddenly woke up. His eyes narrowed as he murmured, little friend Lu is in danger so soon. Ling Shiqi used the scripture to make a deal with Tu Deng not long ago to ask Tu Deng to save him once. Now that they broke into the sect protection formation, Ling Shiqi didn't know what Sang and Tong wanted to do, so it was better to be safe. Tu Deng withdrew the golden light around him. He immediately saw the sect protection formation on the Goo God peak. His face couldn't help but become dignified. Sang and Tong actually opened the sect protection formation. The Goo God sect has already reached this point. However, Tu Deng's eyes suddenly widened. No. This sect protection formation is strange. This is clearly the blood sacrifice formation. Sang and Tong actually deduced the blood sacrifice formation from the words I left behind. Not good. Immediately, Tu Deng turned into a golden stream of light and went straight to the Goo God peak. Chapter 378. With proper preparations, the two princes and Yu Ruifeng led everyone into the Goo God sect protecting array. As soon as he stepped into the array, Ling Shiqi saw that everything around him was green. It was filled with green smoke, but in reality, it was all goo poison. Once inhaled, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, the goo worm on his shoulder opened its mouth and spat out a faint black fog that enveloped him, isolating the green poisonous gas outside. The effect is not bad. With the black smoke blocking him, Ling Shiqi quietly opened his Byakugan. Then he was stunned. Originally, he expected that there would be many Goo God sect disciples hiding nearby, ready to ambush them at any time. But there was not a single Goo God sect disciple's aura. Instead, at the peak, there were over 1,000 spirit cultivators auras. It turned out that all the Gu God sect disciples ran to the peak. Ling Shiqi felt that it was strange, they actually gave up such an advantageous terrain and ran to the peak. It was really strange. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but think, could it be that Sang and Tong already guessed that Prince Gus was prepared, so they decided to gather all their forces and fight to the death? Walking and walking, everyone was about to reach the peak. The others gradually sensed something. There were a few whispers in the group. It's so quiet. Something is wrong. Could it be a trap? Hearing this, Prince Heli said loudly, "What's wrong?" Sang and Tong knew we were prepared, so they gathered all their forces at the peak to put up a desperate struggle. Something is wrong. Prince Gus frowned. If Sang and Tong knew that we were prepared, they should have retreated. Now that all the exits of the Gu God Peak are blocked by us, it means that they did not escape. With Sang and Tong's temperament, it is possible that they are planning to die together. Prince Heli analyzed. That makes sense. Prince Gus said, "We still have to be careful." Thus, everyone was even more vigilant as they walked to the peak. At the peak, there were 3 palaces in a triangle. In the middle was a huge jade plaza. Thousands of disciples of the Gu God sect were standing solemnly in the middle of the square, waiting for the arrival of the enemy. However, Sect Master Sang and Tong were not here. Only Year and several gang spirit realm elders were standing at the front. Not long after, the 2 princes and Yu Ruifeng arrived with their men. Even though thousands of people had entered the square, it was not crowded at all. Prince Heli didn't care about the seriously injured Yi, and the gang spirit realm cultivators at all. He roared, "Where is Sang and Tong? Come out and die." Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, a burst of wild laughter rang out. Judging from the voice, it was Sang He Tong. However, his voice came from all directions, making it impossible to determine his location. Prince Gus suddenly closed his eyes as if he was trying to sense something. But he quickly opened his eyes and whispered, "My senses are greatly limited in this poison array. I can't sense where he is. Are you looking for me?" Sang He Tong's voice resounded once more. At the same time, his figure appeared once more. But the strange thing was that there were actually 3 Sang He Tongs. The 3 Sang He Tongs stood at the top of the 3 palaces, looking at the crowd with contemptuous smiles. It was as if a god who was high above the 9 heavens was looking down at the ant-like beings. Prince Heli immediately snorted, "Humph," pretending to be mysterious. "This is my home ground. If you want to kill me, let's see if you have the ability to do so." Sang He Tong sneered. Prince Gus, Prince Heli, and Yu Ruifeng quietly exchanged glances. Then the 3 of them suddenly rushed to the 3 Sang He Tongs. The 3 Sang He Tongs smiled strangely and suddenly disappeared. Yu Ruifeng and the other 2 Oneness of Heaven and Man realm masters all rushed into the 3 palaces. They all thought that Sang He Tong was deliberately mystifying. Now that the first elder of the Gu God sect was seriously injured, Sang He Tong was the only one who could fight. Therefore, no matter what Sang He Tong's plan was, they could break it with force. Because they were far more powerful than the Gu God sect in terms of high-end combat power and number of people. Rumble, the 3 Oneness of Heaven and Man realm cultivators attacked with astonishing might. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the 3 palaces were destroyed. At the same time, the thousands of Imperial Guards also rushed to kill the Gu God sect disciples. A huge battle between over 10,000 spirit cultivators had begun. Red instantly became the main color of the mountain peak. Ling Shiqi was swimming in the crowd. He found a disciple of the Gu God sect who was at the Spirit Pulse realm and started to fight. With his current strength, he could kill the disciple in 1 or 2 moves, but he did not do so. Because their advantage was too big, so big that it did not matter if he was there or not. Another more important reason was that Ling Shiqi had always felt that something was not quite right. Sang He Tong gathered all the Gu God sect disciples at the peak, giving off a feeling of fighting to the death. But if it was Ling Shiqi, he would take advantage of the sect protecting array and bring the disciples to forcefully break out of the encirclement. As the saying goes, where there is life, there is hope. As long as they escape, they can at least save the lives of many disciples. Now that Sang Tong had done this, if nothing unexpected happened, the disciples of the Gu God sect would be completely annihilated. What was the point of doing this? Unless Sang Tong had a way to turn the tide. Leng Shiqi carefully observed his surroundings as he paddled. He wanted to see what Sang Tong was doing. Very quickly, Leng Shiqi found something strange and familiar. With so many spirit cultivators on both sides fighting, blood quickly flowed into a river. However, the blood was seeping into the jade stone plaza below at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, everyone's attention was focused on the battle, so they did not notice it for a moment. Leng Shiqi felt a chill down his spine. Because he had seen this scene before in the Phantom Spirit's Secret. He remembered that on the stone platform, those vengeful spirits used this method to absorb spirit cultivators' blood and soul power to strengthen themselves. Later on, he found out that there was a blood-refining array under their feet. It was a terrifying array that Meng Tianzong used to sacrifice tens of thousands of disciples to break through. And now, on the Gu God Peak, a similar scene appeared, which made Leng Shiqi even more uneasy. A crazy idea appeared in his mind: there's also a blood sacrifice array here. Chapter 379. While Leng Shiqi was secretly guessing, Yu Ruifeng's side also changed. After the three of them destroyed the palace, they didn't find Sang Tong's figure. It turned out that the three Sang Tongs were just illusions. Just as they were about to attack again, the three palaces suddenly shot out blood-red light into the sky. The blood-red light suddenly formed three cages, trapping Yu Ruifeng and the other two inside. What was even more mysterious was that the three Unity of Heaven Realm experts couldn't do anything to the blood-red cage. At this time, they all realized that something was wrong. The Imperial Guards also noticed this change, but Prince Heli shouted, "Don't worry about us, kill all the disciples of the Gu God sect first." Although the blood-red light temporarily trapped them, it didn't pose any threat to them. As long as they continued to attack, they would soon be able to escape. The Imperial Guards killed even more vigorously. However, they didn't care. In some places, after the jade under their feet was broken, blood-red gullies were revealed. Leng Shiqi saw it. He thought of the series of strange actions of Sang Tong, and a terrifying thought appeared in his mind. Sang Tong is very likely to be like Meng Tianzong, wanting to kill a lot of spirit cultivators to break through to the Sky Origin realm. The battle outside the Gu God Peak was all part of Sang Tong's plan. He deliberately leaked the final information to the Dark Thunder Guards through Guan Fei Hong to create the illusion that he was defeated, so that many experts and Imperial Guards would be attracted to the Gu God Peak. Of course, all of this was just Leng Shiqi's guess. If all of this was true, Sang Tong was too terrifying. Leng Shiqi didn't care about the truth. He already had the intention to retreat. If his guess was right, then this place was clearly a dead place. If he guessed wrong, the destruction of the Gu God sect was only a matter of time. The result would be the same whether he was here or not. So he pulled Guan Fei Hong and said, "Old Guan, quickly follow me." When Guan Fei heard this, he didn't hesitate and wanted to leave with Leng Shiqi. Unfortunately, they were still one step too late. Now almost all the disciples of the Gu God sect had been killed, and only a few elders of the Gang Spirit realm were still struggling. However, they were all covered in blood. Obviously, they couldn't hold on for long. However, at this time, the whole Jade Square suddenly began to tremble. Every time it trembled, it became more and more violent, and the blood gullies under the jade slabs were exposed. Everyone exclaimed when they saw this scene, but their exclamations immediately turned into horror. With a flash of blood-red light, an extremely powerful suction force suddenly came from under everyone's feet, making them unable to move. "I can't move, what's going on? Ah, my blood is flowing out. Me too. Help me. Help me." No. Soon, several peoples, the suctions, and the the suction force became stronger. Everyone present, including the thousands of imperial guards, the experts of the 4 realms of heaven, the remaining people of the Gu God sect, and even Yu Ruifeng and the other 2, were all the same. No one was an exception. The great elder of the Gu God sect, Year, also exclaimed, "Sect leader, what are you doing?" Prince Heli also felt that there was a strange power in the blood light that trapped them, and it was sucking their qi and blood. Sang He Tong, what are you playing at? Ha ha ha. Sang He Tong laughed again. This time, he laughed more freely and crazily than last time. Sang He Tong finally appeared. He drilled out from the ground in the center of the square. His qi was much stronger than before, and he had reached the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. His hands formed a seal, and as soon as the seal moved, all the spirit cultivators within 100 feet of him exploded. A large amount of qi and blood didn't scatter, but all poured into Sang He Tong's body, and his qi also increased a little. Yu Ruifeng and the other 2's faces darkened. They were experienced and knowledgeable, so they immediately knew what Sang He Tong was doing. He actually wanted to blood refine the spirit cultivators here to increase his cultivation. Sang He Tong was originally at the late stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. Just now, over 1,000 spirit cultivators had died in the battle, and he had silently absorbed their qi and blood. Now, he was at the peak of the unity of heaven and man realm. In terms of cultivation alone, he was the strongest existence among the people present. But Sang He Tong was clearly not satisfied with this. He laughed sinisterly, "Your Highnesses, and Master Yu of the Dark Thunder Guards, you guys have schemed to get rid of me, to destroy the Gu God sect. Now that the disciples of the Gu God sect are all dead, are you satisfied?" "Lunatic, you lunatic!" Prince Heli roared. "Lunatic? You're right, I am a lunatic. So what if all the disciples of the Gu God sect are dead? As long as I break through to the Sky Origin realm, a mere Gu God sect can be rebuilt at any time." Prince Gus suddenly said, "So your goal has always been to use such a vicious method to break through to the Sky Origin realm, and not to obtain the throne?" Sang He Tong laughed disdainfully. "Throne? Humph, that kind of laughable thing is only pursued by people like you. Only power is the most beautiful thing in this world." At this point, Sang He Tong's face showed an infatuated expression. "As for the throne? After all of you become the energy for me to break through to the Sky Origin realm, I will support Chu Li to the throne, and let him continue to provoke the Thunderfire dynasty." Also, Master Yu of the Dark Thunder Guards died in Zhu Lu country. I believe that the Thunderfire dynasty will attack Zhu Lu country soon. At that time, there will be countless fresh blood for me to cultivate, and I might even reach a higher realm. When these words came out, no matter which side it was, they were all shocked. No one would have thought that Sang He Tong had such a grand plan. Leng Shiqi finally connected all the dots. It turned out that Sang He Tong had secretly sent Jill and the others to the West Desolate Province to collect iron, and he had already started his plan. He treated everyone, even the entire Zhu Lu country, as a chess piece. Such a person was simply terrifying. At the same time, far away in King's City, dawn had already broken. Elder Chu Li did not sleep for the entire night. He stood in the courtyard, looking at the Gu God Peak. The result of the battle at the Gu God Peak directly determined his fate. He muttered, "I hope Sang He Tong succeeds." However, at this moment, Chu Li's eyes suddenly became hollow, and in a breath's time, they returned to normal. He then walked out of the courtyard, and said to the servant, "Prepare a sedan, we're going to the palace." "Yes, master." Chu Li smiled, "It's time to prepare for the ascension." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.